Maya Hart never thought desperation would lead her to the doorstep of Boston's most dangerous man, or that saving her life would become his obsession. When a mysterious stranger in an expensive suit intervenes during her darkest hour, she assumes it's chance. But Nico Valenti doesn't believe in coincidence, and women who fall into his orbit rarely escape unchanged. What begins as a single act of protection spirals into a dangerous bargain: her freedom for his devotion, her truth for his empire's darkest secrets. By the time Maya realizes the bartender who saved her is actually the heir to a criminal dynasty, she's already too close to walk away. And he's already decided she's worth burning his world down to keep. If you're ready to dive into Maya and Nico's dangerous love story, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels across the globe. Now let's begin where it all started, on a bitter Boston night when one desperate woman met the man who would change everything. The worst shifts always happen on Thursdays. Maya Hart had learned this truth during her first week at the Meridian, an upscale bar in Boston's financial district, where the cocktails cost more than her hourly wage, and the clientele treated service staff like attractive furniture. Thursday nights brought a particular breed of customer, the ones who'd survived the week's worst meetings, closed deals that would make or break careers, and arrived at the bar ready to celebrate or drown their sorrows with equal aggression. Tonight was shaping up to be spectacularly terrible. Maya balanced a tray of martinis, 3 dirty, 1 with extra olives, 1 impossibly specific with a whisper of vermouth that had required her to remake it twice, and navigated the crush of bodies near the main bar. Her feet ached in the required heels, cheap ones from a discount store that were already rubbing blisters despite the band-aids she'd strategically placed that morning. The black dress that constituted her uniform was a size too small, borrowed from another waitress who'd quit without warning, and the fabric pulled uncomfortably across her shoulders every time she lifted her arms. Finally, the woman who'd ordered the complicated martini snatched it from the tray without looking at Maya's face. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten how to walk." Maya's smile remained professionally fixed, a skill she'd perfected over 3 weeks of employment. "Enjoy your evening." She turned away before the woman could find something else to criticize, her mind already calculating the tip she definitely wasn't going to receive. The math was depressing but familiar. Even on good nights, even when she smiled until her face hurt and laughed at jokes that made her skin crawl, the tips barely covered her subway fare and the cheapest meals she could find. The actual paycheck, the one that came every 2 weeks and somehow seemed smaller each time, that went straight to her landlord, who was already threatening eviction despite her best efforts to negotiate. 3 months ago, Maya's life had looked completely different. She'd had a steady job at a marketing firm, a modest but clean apartment in Somerville, and a boyfriend who'd seemed stable until the day he'd emptied their joint account and disappeared to California with a woman he'd met at a conference. The breakup had been devastating. The financial ruin had been catastrophic. Without the cushion of shared rent and the savings she'd thought were secure, Maya had spiraled fast. The marketing firm had downsized 2 weeks after her breakup, and her position had been eliminated in favor of restructuring. Her emergency fund, what little had remained after her ex's theft, had evaporated paying for her mother's unexpected medical bills back in Ohio. By the time she'd found work at the Meridian, she was already 2 months behind on rent and fielding increasingly hostile calls from her landlord. The new apartment, if the cramped studio in a questionable neighborhood could be called that, was all she could afford. The building had broken locks, unreliable heat, and neighbors who fought loudly at all hours. Her landlord, a perpetually angry man named Chen, who seemed to take personal offense to her existence, had made it clear that one more late payment would mean eviction. That deadline was tomorrow. Maya's stomach twisted with familiar anxiety as she delivered another round of drinks, this time to a table of finance bros who were already too drunk to notice her approach. One of them grabbed at her wrist as she set down his bourbon, his grip loose but insistent. "Hey, sweetheart. You got a boyfriend?" She extracted her wrist with practiced ease, stepping back before he could try again. Can I get you gentlemen anything else?" "Yeah, your number." He grinned, showing too many teeth. His friends laughed like he'd said something clever. "I'll send your server back to check on you." Maya was already moving, her tray held like a shield. Behind the main bar, she found Marcus, the night manager and the only person at the Meridian who'd shown her genuine kindness. He was mixing something elaborate involving fire and cinnamon, his dark hands steady despite the chaos surrounding him. "Table 7 getting handsy again?" he asked without looking up. "Nothing I can't handle." Maya set her empty tray down and reached for the order tickets that had piled up in her absence. 3 more tables, 2 of them demanding complicated cocktails that would take Marcus several minutes to prepare. Her feet throbbed in protest at the thought of more walking. "You look exhausted, Maya." She managed a smile that felt more like a grimace. "I'm fine." "You're working yourself into the ground." Marcus finished the flaming cocktail and slid it toward a waiting server. Then he turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't leftover bar nuts?" Maya's stomach growled in response, betraying her. She couldn't remember her last real meal. Breakfast had been black coffee. Lunch had been more coffee and a protein bar she'd found in the bottom of her purse. "I'm fine," she repeated, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then reached under the bar and produced a wrapped sandwich. "Turkey and Swiss. Made it this morning and forgot to eat it. It's yours if you want it." The kindness nearly broke her. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She couldn't cry at work, couldn't show weakness. The moment management thought she was unstable, she'd be replaced by one of the dozens of desperate people who applied for positions like hers every single day. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the sandwich with trembling fingers. "Take your break. 10 minutes. I'll cover your tables." Maya wanted to argue, to insist she could keep working, but the exhaustion was suddenly overwhelming. She nodded and slipped into the back hallway, past the kitchen and storage rooms, to the small employee area that smelled of cigarettes and industrial cleaner. The sandwich was perfect. Fresh bread, quality meat, the kind of simple meal that felt like luxury when you'd been surviving on scraps. She ate mechanically, her mind cycling through the same impossible math she'd been running for weeks. $6,000. That's what Chen had demanded for the back rent plus late fees that seemed to multiply every time they spoke. $6,000 by tomorrow, or he'd file for eviction and she'd be on the street. She'd already tried everything. A loan from the bank, denied due to her trashed credit score, courtesy of her ex's financial sabotage. Borrowing from friends, but most of her college connections had drifted away after graduation, and the few who remained were struggling just as hard as she was. Her mother had nothing to give. The medical bills had wiped her out too. Maya had even considered one of those predatory payday loan places, but the interest rates were criminal, and she'd only be trading one disaster for another. There was no way out. Tomorrow she'd be evicted. She'd lose the apartment, the security deposit, everything. She'd be couch surfing or sleeping in her car, except she'd sold her car 2 months ago to make rent. Maya finished the sandwich and wrapped the paper carefully, disposed of it in the trash, and checked her reflection in the small mirror above the employee sink. Her makeup was still intact, her hair still pulled back in the required sleek ponytail. She looked professional, put together, like someone who had her life under control rather than someone spiraling toward homelessness. The mask was perfect. It had to be. When she returned to the floor, Marcus gave her a subtle nod and she picked up where she'd left off, smiling, serving, pretending everything was fine. The bar had grown more crowded in her absence, a crush of bodies and noise that made navigation treacherous. She squeezed between groups of suits and cocktail dresses, her tray loaded with fresh drinks, her mind carefully blank. That's when she noticed him. He was standing at the far end of the bar, partially obscured by the crowd, but something about him immediately caught her attention. Maybe it was his stillness in a room full of chaotic motion. Maybe it was the way he seemed to occupy space differently than everyone else, a quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. Or maybe it was simply that he was watching her with an intensity that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Maya faltered mid-step, nearly spilling a glass of red wine. She recovered quickly, delivering her tray of drinks to the waiting table, but her awareness had narrowed to a single point. The man at the bar, still watching. She risked another glance as she returned to the service station. He was dressed impeccably, a charcoal suit that looked custom-tailored, crisp white shirt open at the collar, no tie. Dark hair, slightly too long, pushed back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Strong jaw, Roman nose, eyes so dark they looked black from a distance. He held a glass of whiskey but hadn't taken a drink, his attention fixed entirely on her, not in the way the drunk finance bros looked at her, like she was something to consume. This was different, calculating, almost concerned. Maya forced herself to look away, unnerved. Customers stared sometimes, especially the ones who'd had too much to drink, but this felt different, more deliberate, like he was cataloging details, building a file in his mind. "You okay?" Marcus appeared at her elbow, following her line of sight to the stranger. His expression shifted, something wary entering his eyes. "You know him?" "No, he's just—" Maya trailed off, uncertain how to explain the feeling crawling under her skin. "Watching." "Yeah." Marcus's voice was carefully neutral. "He does that." "You know him?" "He comes in sometimes, never orders much. Tips well, keeps to himself." Marcus paused, then added quietly, "Probably best to keep your distance." Before Maya could ask what that meant, a crash echoed from across the bar. Someone had knocked over a tray of glasses, and Marcus was gone, moving to help with the cleanup. Maya returned to her tables, forcing the stranger out of her mind. She had enough problems without adding mysterious men to the list. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of orders and forced smiles. The crowd grew rowdier as the night progressed, the noise level rising to a dull roar that made her head pound. She avoided looking at the end of the bar where the man had been standing, but she could feel his presence like a weight against her back. Still there, still watching. By the time her shift ended at midnight, Maya was dead on her feet. Her tips for the night, carefully counted in the employee room, amounted to $83. Better than nothing. Nowhere near enough. She changed out of her uniform in the cramped bathroom, pulling on jeans and a worn sweater, trading the painful heels for sneakers that were falling apart at the seams. Her reflection in the fluorescent lighting looked haggard, shadows under her eyes, cheekbones too sharp from skipped meals, hair limp with exhaustion. $6,000. Tomorrow. The impossibility of it sat on her chest like a stone. Maya gathered her things, purse, coat, the carefully folded uniform she'd have to wash tonight in her apartment's broken washing machine, and headed for the exit. The bar had mostly cleared out, just a few stragglers and the closing staff wiping down tables. The main lights had come up, harsh and revealing, turning the glamorous space into something ordinary and slightly sad. She pushed through the back door into the alley where employees parked, the November air hitting her like a slap. Boston winter was coming early this year, the temperature already dropping into the 30s at night. Her coat was too thin, another casualty of her financial collapse. She'd sold her good winter jacket to a consignment shop for $40 that had immediately gone to her electric bill. The alley was dark, lit by a single buzzing streetlight that cast everything in sickly yellow. Maya's car was long gone, so she'd be taking the T home, a journey that would involve 2 train changes and a 15-minute walk through a neighborhood that made her nervous even in daylight. She was halfway to the street when she heard footsteps behind her. Maya's pulse spiked. She quickened her pace, keys already threaded between her fingers the way her mother had taught her. The footsteps matched her speed. "Hey, hey, waitress!" She recognized the voice, one of the finance bros from table 7, the one who'd grabbed her wrist. Maya kept walking, her heart hammering, almost to the street, just a few more yards. "Don't be rude, I'm talking to you." A hand closed on her shoulder, spinning her around. The finance bro, she'd never learned his name, never wanted to, loomed over her, his breath reeking of bourbon and entitlement. His tie was loosened, his expensive shirt untucked, eyes glassy with alcohol. "I asked you a question earlier. You never answered." His grip tightened, fingers digging into her collarbone. "You got a boyfriend or not?" "Let go of me." Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Come on, don't be like that. I tip good. I can make it worth your while." His free hand reached for her face, and Maya jerked back. "I said let go." "Playing hard to get? That's cute." He pulled her closer, and Maya's training kicked in. She brought her knee up hard, aiming for his groin. She missed. He twisted at the last second, and her knee connected with his thigh instead. His expression darkened, the drunken friendliness evaporating into something ugly. "You bitch! The lady asked you to let go." The new voice was quiet, but cut through the tension like a blade. Maya's assailant froze, his grip loosening slightly. She turned her head and saw him, the stranger from the bar, stepping out of the shadows near the building. Up close, he was even more imposing. Tall, easily 6'2", with the kind of lean muscle that came from discipline rather than vanity. His dark eyes were fixed on the finance bro with an expression that made Maya's blood run cold. "This doesn't concern you," her assailant said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "It does now." The stranger moved closer, his steps unhurried but purposeful. "You're going to let her go. You're going to apologize. Then you're going to leave." "Who the fuck do you think—" "Now." The single word carried weight beyond its syllables. The finance bro's hands dropped from Maya like she'd burned him. He took a step back, then another, his earlier bravado crumbling under the stranger's stare. "Sorry," he muttered in Maya's general direction. Then he was stumbling toward the street, nearly tripping over his own feet in his haste to escape. Maya stood frozen, her pulse still racing, trying to process what had just happened. The stranger watched until the finance bro disappeared around the corner, then turned his attention to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "He touched you. Did he injure you?" "No, I'm fine." The words came out shaky. Maya tried to steady herself, wrapping her arms around her middle. "Thank you. You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did." He studied her face, that same intense assessment she'd felt from across the bar. "You're trembling. It's cold. It's fear." He shrugged out of his suit jacket and held it out to her. "Take this." "I can't—" "You're freezing and in shock. Take the jacket, Maya." She went still. "How do you know my name?" Something flickered across his face, acknowledgement of a mistake perhaps, or calculation about how much to reveal. "Your name tag, from earlier." That made sense, except Maya had removed her name tag before leaving the bar, had tucked it into her purse along with the uniform. The lie was smooth but obvious, and the stranger seemed to know she'd caught it. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly, "but I'd feel better if you weren't standing in a dark alley shaking from cold and adrenaline. Please take the jacket." Maya accepted it because arguing seemed more dangerous than compliance. The jacket was still warm from his body, lined with silk that felt like luxury against her skin. It smelled like expensive cologne and something else, gun oil maybe, though that seemed absurd. "Do you have a car?" he asked. "No, I'm taking the T." His expression darkened. "Not at midnight. Not through this neighborhood. I do it every night. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You were just assaulted." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "My car is coming. I'll drive you home." Every instinct Maya possessed screamed that this was a terrible idea. Strange men offering rides, dark alleys, the way he'd appeared out of nowhere, the way he'd known her name. This was how women disappeared. But another part of her, the exhausted, desperate part that had been running on empty for too long, whispered that he'd saved her, that he could have hurt her already if that was his intention, that the alternative was the subway and the long walk through streets where worse men than finance bros prowled. "I don't know you," she said carefully. "No, you don't?" He extended his hand. "Nico Valenti." She stared at his hand for a moment before taking it. His grip was warm, firm, the calluses on his palm surprising. "Maya Hart. But you already knew that." "I did." "How?" "I asked Marcus about you, weeks ago." Nico released her hand but didn't step back. "You've been working yourself to exhaustion, coming in early, staying late, taking every shift they'll give you. I wanted to know why." The honesty was more unsettling than a lie would have been. "That's creepy." "Yes, it is." No apology, just acknowledgement. "My car's here." Maya turned and saw a black sedan pulling into the alley, silent as a shadow. The windows were tinted dark enough to be illegal. The driver, a massive man with a shaved head and a neck like a tree trunk, didn't look at her, just kept his eyes forward in a way that suggested military training. Every red flag in Maya's brain was waving frantically. This was wrong. Dangerous. She should run. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Why are you helping me?" Nico opened the back door of the sedan, then turned to face her fully. In the weak streetlight, his features seemed carved from shadow and bone, beautiful and terrible at once. "Because I can," he said simply, "and because you need it." "You don't know anything about what I need." "Don't I?" His eyes held hers, and Maya felt stripped bare under that gaze. "You're drowning, Maya Hart. I can see it. The question is whether you're going to let someone throw you a rope or if you're stubborn enough to drown on principle." The words hit too close to home. Maya's throat tightened, her carefully maintained composure cracking. She was so tired, so scared, so completely out of options. "One ride home," she said finally. "That's all." "One ride home," Nico agreed, but the way he said it suggested he knew it wouldn't end there. Maya climbed into the sedan, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Nico slid in beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, and the driver pulled smoothly into traffic without waiting for an address. "Where are we going?" Maya asked, then realized the driver was already heading in the right direction. Toward Somerville. Toward her building. "You know where I live?" "Yes." No apology, no justification, just fact. Maya should have been terrified, should have demanded to be let out. Instead, she found herself studying Nico's profile in the darkness, trying to understand what kind of man went to this much trouble for a waitress he didn't know. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. Nico turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Nothing you're not willing to give." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have right now." He reached into his jacket, the one he'd given her, and produced a business card. Thick stock, minimal design, just a name and a phone number. No company, no title. "If you ever need anything, call this number." "Why would I need anything from you?" "Because tomorrow your landlord is going to demand $6,000 you don't have. Because the job market is terrible, and you're one missed shift away from losing the only income you've got. Because you're alone in this city, and you've run out of people to ask for help." Nico's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "I'm offering to be the person you can ask." Maya's hands tightened around the card, her mind reeling. He knew about her debt, about the eviction. How much had he learned about her life? "This is insane," she whispered. "Yes. I don't know you." "You will." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The sedan pulled to a stop in front of Maya's building, a sagging 3-story walk-up with cracked windows and graffiti on the mailboxes. In the darkness, it looked even more depressing than usual. Nico's driver remained motionless, eyes forward, as if he witnessed scenes like this every night. Maya reached for the door handle, then stopped. "Why me?" "Because you're still fighting." Nico's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Most people in your situation would have given up weeks ago, gone home, declared bankruptcy, let the world win. But you're still here, still working, still refusing to break." He paused. "That kind of strength is rare, worth protecting." Before Maya could respond, he leaned forward and opened her door. Cold air rushed in, breaking the strange intimacy of the moment. "Good night, Maya Hart." She climbed out on unsteady legs, still clutching his jacket and the business card. "Good night, Mr. Valenti." "Nico." His eyes caught the streetlight, reflecting it back like a predator's. "Call me Nico." The sedan pulled away before Maya could reply, disappearing into the night as silently as it had come. She stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, her mind spinning, before finally climbing the stairs to her apartment. Inside, the space was exactly as she'd left it, cramped, cold, the heat only working intermittently. Her few possessions were already mostly packed, boxes stacked against the walls in preparation for an eviction she couldn't prevent. The refrigerator contained a half-empty bottle of ketchup and some wilted lettuce. The furniture was second-hand and broken. This was rock bottom. And tomorrow, she'd fall even further. Maya set Nico's jacket on her bed, the only piece of furniture she actually owned, and studied the business card under the dim lamp. The number stared back at her, 10 digits that represented either salvation or damnation, probably both. She thought about the way Nico had looked at her, the way he'd known exactly what she was facing. The car, the driver, the quiet authority that suggested this was a man who didn't make empty promises. Who was he? What did he want? And why had he chosen her? The questions circled endlessly as Maya changed into pajamas and crawled into bed, still wearing Nico's jacket because her apartment was freezing and the expensive wool was the warmest thing she owned. She set an alarm for 6 a.m., early enough to make one last desperate call to her landlord, to beg for an extension she knew wouldn't come. But beneath her phone, half hidden under the pillow, was Nico's card. Just in case. Maya's alarm went off in what felt like minutes. She dragged herself out of bed, every muscle protesting, and made instant coffee with water she had to heat on the stove because her microwave had died last week. The apartment was frigid. The heat had cut out entirely overnight, and her breath misted in front of her face as she dialed Chen's number. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice already hostile. "What?" "Mr. Chen, it's Maya Hart. I wanted to talk about the payment that's due today. $6,000 by 5 p.m. I already told you this." "I understand, but I'm asking if there's any way we could work out a payment plan. I have $800 right now, and if you could give me until the end of the month." "No." "Please, Mr. Chen, I've been a good tenant. I've never caused problems. I just need a little more time." "You've been a terrible tenant. Late on rent every month. Complaints from neighbors about noise." That was a lie. Maya was never home long enough to make noise. "I already have someone lined up to take the apartment. You pay the full amount by 5 or you're out." "I'm begging you." 5 p.m., Ms. Hart. Don't make me call the sheriff." The line went dead. Maya sat on her bed, staring at her phone, feeling the last threads of hope unravel. $800. 6,000 needed. There was no miracle coming, no last-minute save. Her eyes drifted to Nico's business card still sitting on her nightstand. "If you ever need anything." This was insane. Dangerous. She didn't know this man, didn't understand what he wanted or what accepting his help would mean. He could be a loan shark, a criminal, someone who would trap her in a debt she could never repay. But what choice did she have? Maya picked up the card with trembling fingers and dialed before she could change her mind. He answered on the first ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. "Maya, how did you know it was me?" "I've been waiting for your call." A pause. "What do you need?" The words stuck in her throat. Accepting this felt like stepping off a cliff, trusting that someone would catch her rather than let her fall. But she was already falling, had been falling for months. $6,000, she whispered, by 5 p.m. today. Done. Just like that? Just like that? She heard movement on his end, the sound of footsteps, a door closing. "Give me your address. You already know my address." "Say it anyway. I want to hear you choose this." Maya closed her eyes. 414 Morrison Street, apartment 2B. "The money will be there in 2 hours, cash. You'll pay your landlord and keep the receipt." Nico's voice was calm, businesslike, as if he loaned out thousands of dollars every morning before breakfast. "Is there anything else you need?" "I don't understand why you're doing this. I told you last night you're still fighting. That's worth supporting." "Nothing is free," Maya said quietly. "What's this going to cost me?" "Nothing you're not willing to give," Nico repeated. "But Maya, if you take this money, you're going to owe me. Not in the way you're thinking, not your body, not your soul, but you will owe me honesty. When I ask you questions, you answer them. When I offer you something, you consider it seriously rather than dismissing it out of pride. That's the debt. Truth and consideration." It sounded too simple, too clean. But Maya was out of options and out of time. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay. Good. Answer your door when the courier arrives. And Maya?" "Yes?" "This is just the beginning." The line went dead. Maya sat frozen for several minutes, trying to process what she'd just done. She'd accepted money from a stranger, created a debt she didn't understand, stepped into something that felt bigger and more dangerous than anything she'd faced before. But she'd also bought herself time, a chance, a way to survive past today. At exactly 8 a.m., someone knocked on her door. Maya opened it to find a woman in a professional suit, early 30s, attractive, with a briefcase that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe. She didn't smile. "Maya Hart?" Yes? This is for you. Count it, please. The woman opened her briefcase and removed a stack of bundled bills. Maya's hands shook as she accepted them, fanning through the hundreds with growing disbelief. It was all there. $6,000 in cash, crisp and new, smelling like bank vaults and impossible rescue. It's correct, Maya managed. Sign here. Maya signed the receipt the woman produced, her signature barely legible through her trembling. The woman nodded once, snapped her briefcase closed, and disappeared down the stairs without another word. Maya closed the door and leaned against it, staring at the money in her hands. Real. This was real. She paid Chen at 4 p.m., watching his expression shift from hostile to surprised, to calculating as she counted out the bills. He provided a receipt without comment, his eyes lingering on the cash in a way that made Maya's skin crawl. Pleasure doing business, he said, and Maya left before she could say something that would ruin this fragile peace. Back in her apartment, she should have felt relief. Instead, she felt the weight of the debt settling onto her shoulders. Nico Valenti had saved her, and she had no idea what that salvation would ultimately cost. Her phone rang an hour later. Unknown number. Hello? Maya Hart? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Rebecca Channing from Hartwell & Associates. We're a consulting firm in downtown Boston, and we've had your resume in our system for several months. A position has just opened up that we think you'd be perfect for. Would you be available for an interview tomorrow morning? Maya's mind went blank. She'd sent her resume to dozens of firms months ago, back when she'd first lost her job. None of them had ever called. Yes, I'm available. Excellent. 9 a.m., our office on Boylston Street. Ask for me at reception. We're looking forward to meeting you, Ms. Hart. The call ended before Maya could ask any questions. She stood in her apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, feeling reality tilt sideways. The timing was too perfect, too convenient. $6,000 this morning, a job interview tomorrow. Nico. It had to be. Somehow he'd arranged this. But how did he have that kind of power? What kind of man could make money appear with a phone call and create job opportunities overnight? Maya thought about calling him, demanding answers, but she remembered the deal. Truth and consideration. He'd ask her to consider this gift, this opportunity, rather than reject it out of pride. So she would go to the interview. She would be brilliant. And if she got the job, when she got the job, she would be one step further into Nico Valenti's carefully constructed web. The question was whether she was walking into a trap or toward salvation. Maya suspected the answer was both. She spent the rest of the evening preparing, pulling together the best outfit she owned, researching Hartwell & Associates online. The firm was legitimate, established, respected, with high-profile clients and competitive salaries. If this was Nico's influence, he'd chosen well. That night, Maya lay in bed wearing his jacket again, her mind spinning through possibilities. Who was Nico Valenti? How did he have this much power? And what did he see when he looked at her that made him willing to invest so much in a struggling waitress? The questions followed her into restless sleep, where she dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous promises, of falling and being caught, of debts that could never truly be repaid. Tomorrow would bring answers, or more questions. Either way, Maya Hart's life had changed the moment she'd made that call. There was no going back now. The morning of the interview arrived with unseasonable sunshine that felt like mockery. Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her only professional blouse for the third time, trying to ignore the fact that the fabric was slightly pilled and the hem of her skirt had a small tear she'd mended with black thread that didn't quite match. She looked presentable. Barely. The kind of presentable that whispered trying too hard rather than effortlessly professional. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The interview was in 45 minutes, and she'd already left her apartment twice, only to return for things she'd forgotten. Her portfolio, her good pen, the pad folio that was supposed to make her look organized. Each trip up and down the stairs had left her more anxious, more convinced that this was a mistake. That Hartwell & Associates would take one look at her and know she didn't belong in their world of expensive suits and corner offices. That they'd know Nico had manufactured this opportunity. Maya forced herself to take a breath, to center the way her college therapist had taught her before she'd lost her insurance and could no longer afford sessions. The woman in the mirror looked back with tired eyes and 2 sharp cheekbones, but she also looked determined. Still fighting, Nico had said. He'd been right about that at least. The subway ride downtown felt endless. Maya clutched her portfolio against her chest like armor, trying not to think about the $6,000 that had appeared at her door yesterday, trying not to wonder what other strings Nico was pulling in the background of her life. The train was packed with morning commuters, all of them looking more confident and put together than she felt. A woman across from her scrolled through her phone with manicured nails, her designer handbag sitting carelessly at her feet. A man in a tailored suit read the Financial Times, his watch probably worth more than Maya's yearly income. This was the world she was trying to enter, the world Nico clearly inhabited with ease. Hartwell and Associates occupied 3 floors of a gleaming high-rise on Boylston Street, the kind of building with a marble lobby and security guards who looked like they'd been recruited from the Secret Service. Maya gave her name at the desk, her voice steadier than she felt, and was directed to the elevators with a visitor's badge that felt like a brand marking her as someone who didn't belong. The reception area on the 14th floor was all glass and chrome, furnished with modern chairs that looked beautiful and uncomfortable in equal measure. A woman behind a sleek desk looked up as Maya approached, her smile professional and distant. "Maya Hart for Rebecca Channing," Maya said. "Of course. Ms. Channing is expecting you. Just one moment." The receptionist spoke quietly into her headset, then gestured toward a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. "Third door on the left." Maya walked down the corridor feeling like she was approaching an execution. Through the windows, Boston stretched out below. The Common, the harbor, streets she'd walked 100 times now transformed by altitude into something beautiful and remote. This was the view people paid for. The perspective of power. Rebecca Channing's office was corner-positioned with windows on 2 walls and furniture that probably cost more than Maya's car had. The woman herself stood as Maya entered, tall, blonde, early 40s, with the kind of effortless elegance that came from money and confidence. Her handshake was firm. "Ms. Hart, thank you for coming in on such short notice." "Thank you for the opportunity." Maya settled into the chair Rebecca indicated, fighting the urge to fidget. "I'll be direct. Your resume is impressive. Marketing degree from BU, 3 years at Silverman Associates with increasingly senior responsibilities, excellent references." Rebecca glanced at her computer screen. "The gap in employment is recent. Can you speak to that?" Maya had rehearsed this answer. "Silverman downsized due to market conditions. My position was eliminated as part of a broader restructuring. I've been selective about my next move. I wanted to find the right fit rather than just the first available position." It was a diplomatic way of saying she'd been desperately applying to anything that would have her while working nights at a bar to survive. Rebecca's expression suggested she heard both versions. "And you're currently working service industry to make ends meet." There was no judgment in the statement, just acknowledgement. Maya decided honesty might serve her better than pretense. "Yes, at the Meridian. It's been humbling and instructive. You learn a lot about people when you're serving them drinks." Rebecca's smile warmed slightly. "I'm sure you do. The position we're looking to fill is a senior consultant role working with our retail clients. It would involve strategy development, market analysis, client presentations, work you're familiar with from Silverman. The salary is $75,000 to start, plus bonuses tied to client retention and project outcomes. Benefits are comprehensive." She paused. "Does that interest you?" $75,000. Maya's current salary at the Meridian, when she managed full-time hours, was barely $23,000. The number was dizzying. "Very much," Maya managed. "Good. Let's talk through a scenario." Rebecca pulled up something on her computer. "One of our clients is a mid-size retail chain experiencing declining foot traffic in their physical locations. They're considering a major digital transformation, but concerned about alienating their core customer base, which skews older and less tech-savvy. How would you approach this?" Maya's mind clicked into gear, the familiar territory of problem-solving pushing aside her anxiety. She'd done this work before, knew how to balance innovation with customer comfort, how to build bridges between old models and new realities. She talked for 10 minutes, outlining a phased approach that would test digital initiatives in select markets while maintaining traditional service in others, building feedback loops and adaptation strategies. Rebecca listened with focused attention, occasionally nodding, her expression giving nothing away. When Maya finished, Rebecca leaned back in her chair. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Strategic but pragmatic. Customer-focused without being resistant to change. She studied Maya for a long moment. I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Hart. Your resume came to my attention through an unusual channel. Someone I trust vouched for your capabilities and suggested I give you a serious look. There it was. Confirmation of what Maya had suspected. May I ask who? No. Rebecca's tone was gentle but final. What I can tell you is that the recommendation carried weight, but I wouldn't be offering you this position if I didn't believe you could excel at it. I've been in this business 20 years. I don't hire favors. I hire talent. Maya wanted to ask more questions, to demand to know the extent of Nico's involvement, but Rebecca's expression suggested the topic was closed. Instead, she asked, "What happens next?" If you're interested, I'd like to bring you back tomorrow to meet with 2 of our partners and see our client workspaces. Assuming that goes well, we could have an offer letter to you by end of week. You'd start Monday. 5 days. In 5 days, Maya could have a real job, a real salary, a way out of the spiral that had consumed her life for months. I'm very interested, she said. Excellent. My assistant will coordinate the next interview. Rebecca stood, extending her hand again. Thank you for your time, Ms. Hart. I think you'll be a strong addition to the team. Maya shook her hand, murmured something appropriate, and somehow made it back to the elevator without her knees giving out. It was only when she was outside, standing on the sidewalk in the November sunshine, that she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Nico had done this, had made a phone call or pulled a string or leveraged whatever power he possessed to put her in front of Rebecca Channing. And she'd delivered, had proven she belonged there on merit, not just connections. But the debt had grown. $6,000 yesterday, a career opportunity today. What would he ask for in return? Maya pulled out her phone and dialed his number before she could second-guess the impulse. He answered immediately. How did it go? You know how it went? You probably knew before I walked out of the building. Rebecca called. Yes. She was impressed. Nico's voice carried satisfaction. Congratulations. I didn't accept the job yet. You will. It wasn't arrogance, just certainty. You'd be foolish not to, and you're not foolish. Maya found a bench near the public garden and sat, watching tourists feed ducks in the pond. Normal people doing normal things, their lives uncomplicated by mysterious benefactors and moral ambiguity. What do you want from me, Nico? I want to have dinner with you, tonight. That's it? For now. The honesty was almost worse than a lie would have been. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the autumn sun warm on her face, and made a decision that felt both inevitable and terrifying. Where and when? I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something comfortable. We're not going anywhere that requires performance. I don't have anything that's not comfortable. I can barely afford what I'm wearing right now. Then wear exactly what you're wearing. A pause. Maya, you could show up in pajamas and I'd still want to have dinner with you. This isn't about impressing anyone. Everything is about impressing someone. Not with me. Nico's voice softened. 7 o'clock. I'll see you then. He hung up before she could argue. Maya spent the rest of the day in a strange limbo between anxiety and anticipation. She went back to her apartment, changed out of her interview clothes, tried to distract herself with mundane tasks, laundry, dishes, organizing the boxes she'd packed for an eviction that was no longer coming. But her mind kept circling back to the evening ahead, to the question of what Nico actually wanted. At 6:30, she stood in front of her closet trying to decide what something comfortable meant. Her wardrobe was limited. Work clothes from her previous life, most of them now too loose since she'd lost weight, and casual clothes that were worn to the point of embarrassment. She finally settled on dark jeans that fit reasonably well, a soft gray sweater that didn't have any visible holes, and the nicest pair of boots she owned. The effect was understated, almost plain, but it was honest, and Nico had asked for honesty. At exactly 7 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text. Downstairs. Maya grabbed her coat, still too thin for the weather, and headed down to find the same black sedan from 2 nights ago idling at the curb. Nico was standing beside it, and her breath caught despite her best efforts at composure. He'd dressed down from the suit she'd seen him in before, wearing dark slacks and a black sweater that emphasized his lean frame. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and the effect was somehow more devastating than the formal perfection of their first meeting. He looked approachable, almost human. "Hi," Maya said, suddenly uncertain. "Hi." Nico's smile was slight but genuine. He opened the car door for her. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" "Always." He slid in beside her as the driver pulled into traffic. "You can choose to walk away at any point, Maya. I promise you that." "And if I did? If I said thank you for the money and the job interview, but I'm done?" Nico considered the question seriously. "Then I'd respect that choice. You'd keep the money. Consider it a gift, no strings attached. The job opportunity would stand on its own merit, and I'd leave you alone." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He turned to face her fully. "I'm not interested in keeping you against your will. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "Dinner, conversation, a chance for you to understand who I am and what I'm offering." Nico's dark eyes held hers. "After tonight, you'll have enough information to make an informed decision about whether you want me in your life." The phrasing was deliberate. Not whether she wanted his help or his money, but whether she wanted him. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks and looked away, focusing on the city sliding past outside the tinted windows. They drove for 20 minutes, leaving downtown Boston behind and heading toward the water. Maya didn't recognize the neighborhood, expensive, clearly, with the kind of understated wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Tree-lined streets, historic brownstones, cars that cost more than most people's houses. The sedan pulled up in front of a townhouse that looked like it had been transplanted from a European capital. 4 stories of red brick and black shutters, window boxes that probably bloomed with flowers in warmer months, a door painted glossy black with brass fixtures that gleamed in the streetlight. "This is your home?" Maya asked. "One of them." Nico opened her door and offered his hand. "Come on. I promise the interior is less intimidating than the exterior." That was a lie, Maya discovered, as soon as she stepped inside. The townhouse was beautiful in the way museums were beautiful, full of art and history and things that shouldn't be touched. The foyer alone was larger than her entire apartment, with marble floors and a staircase that curved upward into shadow. But it was also clearly lived in, with books stacked on a side table and a jacket hung carelessly over a chair. Small signs of humanity that kept the space from feeling like a showroom. "Kitchen's this way," Nico said, leading her down a hallway. "I hope you're hungry." The kitchen was modern and professional, all stainless steel and granite countertops, with windows overlooking a small garden that was mostly dormant for winter. Something was cooking. Maya could smell garlic and herbs, the rich scent of meat braising. "You cook?" she asked, surprised. "When I have time. Tonight seemed like a good occasion." Nico moved to the stove, checking whatever was in the large pot with practiced ease. "Osobuco, my grandmother's recipe. It'll be ready in about 10 minutes. Wine?" Maya nodded, still trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the mysterious figure who'd rescued her in an alley, who'd made money and job opportunities appear with phone calls. This version of Nico, barefoot in an expensive kitchen, cooking Italian food, felt dangerously real. He poured 2 glasses of red wine, something that probably cost more than her weekly salary, and handed her one. Their fingers brushed, and Maya felt electricity arc between them, sharp and undeniable. "Tell me about the interview," Nico said, leaning against the counter with easy grace. "It went well. You already know that." "I want to hear your version." So Maya told him, editing nothing, the anxiety, the feeling of not belonging, the moment when the work itself had kicked in, and she'd remembered she was actually good at what she did. Nico listened with the same focused attention she'd noticed before, as if she were the only person in the world worth hearing. "Rebecca said someone vouched for me," Maya added. "That was you." "It was." "How do you know her?" "I know a lot of people in this city." Nico sipped his wine. "Rebecca and I have a professional relationship. When I mentioned I knew someone with your background who was looking for work, she agreed to review your resume. The interview was all you. I couldn't manufacture that." But you could manufacture the opportunity. Yes. No apology, no justification. I could, and I did. Is that a problem? Maya wanted to say yes, wanted to be angry at the manipulation, the strings being pulled behind her back. But the truth was more complicated. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me is grateful. Part of me is terrified of what this means. What do you think it means? That I'm in debt to you. That you're going to ask for something I can't give. Nico set down his wine glass and moved closer, not touching, but near enough that Maya could feel the heat of his body. Let me tell you what I want, and you can decide if it's something you're willing to consider. Okay. I want to know you. Spend time with you. Take you to dinner, have conversations that last until 3 in the morning, learn what makes you laugh, and what keeps you awake at night. His voice was low, intense. I want to make your life easier in whatever ways I can, not because you owe me, but because I have resources I don't need, and you're struggling with problems that money can solve. I want you to accept those resources without shame or guilt. That's it? You just want to give me things? No. Nico's eyes held hers. I want you to let me care about you. That's the real ask. Everything else is just logistics. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. Why me? You could have anyone. Someone from your world, someone who fits. I don't want someone from my world. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I want you. The woman who fights when anyone else would surrender. The woman who serves drinks with grace, even when she's exhausted and scared. The woman who's too proud to ask for help, but brave enough to accept it when it's offered. You don't know me, Maya whispered. Then let me learn. He kissed her then, soft and questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Maya's mind screamed warnings about danger and debt and the massive power imbalance between them, but her body leaned into him anyway, her hands coming up to grip his sweater, her mouth opening under his. The kiss deepened, and Maya felt herself falling, tumbling into something that felt inevitable and terrifying in equal measure. Nico tasted like wine and promises, his hands careful on her waist as if she were something precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya had to grab the counter for support. That's not fair, she said shakily. What isn't? You. This. All of it. Maya pressed her hands to her hot cheeks. I can't think straight when you do that. Good. Nico's smile was crooked, almost boyish. I don't want you thinking. I want you feeling. That's exactly the problem. The timer on the stove chimed, breaking the tension. Nico turned to check the ossobuco, and Maya took the opportunity to steady herself, to rebuild the walls he'd just demolished with one kiss. They ate at a small table in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room Maya had glimpsed off the foyer. The food was incredible. Meat so tender it fell off the bone, risotto creamy and rich, vegetables roasted with herbs. Nico served her with easy hospitality, refilling her wine glass, asking questions about her life before the collapse. Maya found herself talking more than she'd intended, the wine and the food and his genuine interest loosening her tongue. She told him about her childhood in Ohio, her mother's illness, the boyfriend who'd stolen her savings, about the dreams she'd had before everything fell apart, traveling, maybe starting her own consulting firm someday, simple things that seemed impossibly distant now. They're not distant, Nico said quietly. They're just delayed. You say that like it's easy. It's not easy, but it's possible. He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. Maya, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it without arguing. The job at Hartwell is real. You earned that. But there are other things I want to give you that have nothing to do with earning. A better apartment in a safe neighborhood. A car so you don't have to take the subway at midnight. Clothes that make you feel confident instead of self-conscious. These things matter to me because you matter to me. We met 3 days ago. I've been watching you for 3 weeks. At her startled expression, he added, I know how that sounds. But it's true. The first time I saw you at the Meridian, you were running yourself ragged trying to keep up with impossible demands, and you still stopped to help another server who'd dropped a tray. You could have ignored it, protected yourself. Instead, you got on your knees in your required dress and heels, and helped pick up broken glass. That's who you are. Someone who helps even when you're drowning yourself. Maya's throat tightened. That doesn't make me special. It makes you exactly the kind of person I want in my life. Nico's grip on her hand tightened. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to trust me yet. I'm asking you to let me help, to accept that sometimes good things happen not because you earned them, but because someone decided you deserved them. And what do you get out of this arrangement? You, your time, your company, your trust, eventually. He paused. Your honesty when you think I'm wrong, your perspective on a world I've spent too much time isolated from, the chance to be something other than what I've been my entire life. There was something in his voice, loneliness maybe, or hunger for connection, that made Maya's chest ache. She thought about her apartment, about the Meridian, about the endless cycle of exhaustion and anxiety that had been her life for months. And she thought about the alternative he was offering, security, opportunity, the space to breathe and rebuild. It would cost her something, that was certain. The question was whether the price was one she could afford to pay. I need time, she said finally, to think about this, to understand what I'm agreeing to. Take all the time you need. Nico released her hand and stood, beginning to clear dishes. But while you're thinking, let me do something for you, not as payment or obligation, as a gift. What kind of gift? He pulled an envelope from a drawer and set it in front of her. Inside was a key and an address in Cambridge. It's a one-bedroom apartment in a secure building. Furnished, utilities included, month-to-month lease in your name. If you take the job at Hartwell, you'll need somewhere stable to live, somewhere you're not constantly afraid of eviction or break-ins. Nico's expression was serious. This is not contingent on anything else. If you decide tomorrow that you never want to see me again, the apartment is still yours for as long as you need it. Maya stared at the key, her mind reeling. I can't accept this. Why not? Because it's too much. Because I don't understand what you want from me. Because... Her voice broke. Because I'm scared that if I accept this, I won't be able to leave when I need to. Nico crouched beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. Then take the apartment and prove yourself wrong. Show both of us that you can accept help and still maintain your independence, that you can let someone care about you without losing yourself. His hand came up to brush away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You're stronger than you think, Maya Hart. Strong enough to survive what you've been through. Strong enough to accept something good when it's offered. What if I'm not? Then I'll be here to catch you when you fall. The promise hung between them, weighted with significance Maya couldn't fully understand. She thought about her apartment, about the broken locks and unreliable heat, about lying awake at night listening to her neighbors fight and wondering how much longer she could hold on. She thought about the alternative, safety, warmth, a space that was truly hers. And she thought about Nico, this strange and dangerous man who cooked Italian food and kissed like he was trying to memorize the shape of her mouth, who seemed to see through every defense she'd built to the exhausted, terrified woman underneath. Okay, Maya whispered. Okay, I'll take the apartment. Nico's smile was brilliant, transforming his severe features into something almost beautiful. Thank you. But I need you to tell me the truth about something. Anything. Who are you? Really? Not just some businessman who happens to have money and connections. Nobody has this kind of power without it coming from somewhere dark. Nico stood, his expression growing serious again. He poured them both more wine, then returned to his seat across from her. You're right, he said quietly. Nobody has this kind of power without compromise. I'm going to tell you the truth, Maya, but I need you to listen to all of it before you make any decisions. Her heart began to pound. Okay, my family has been in Boston for 3 generations. My grandfather came here from Sicily in the 1950s and built a business empire. Restaurants, construction, real estate development, legitimate businesses mostly. But the foundation they were built on was anything but legitimate. Nico held her gaze. My family is connected, Maya, to organizations that operate outside the law. Not deeply, not the way we used to be, but enough that the connections still exist, still matter. Maya's mouth went dry. You're talking about the Mafia. I'm talking about a complicated legacy that I've spent my adult life trying to distance myself from while still benefiting from the resources it provides. He didn't look away, didn't soften the truth. I've never killed anyone. I've never ordered violence. But I've profited from businesses that were started with dirty money, and I have relationships with people who absolutely have done those things. Well, why are you telling me this? Because you asked for honesty. And because if we're going to continue this, whatever this is, you need to understand what you're walking into. Nico's voice was steady. I can't offer you a simple life, Maya. I can offer you safety, resources, opportunities. But there will always be complications, questions I can't answer, situations where I'll need you to trust me without full explanation. Maya stood abruptly, needing to move, to process. She walked to the window overlooking the garden, her mind spinning. Everything she'd suspected, confirmed, everything she'd feared, laid out in stark honesty. Are you in danger? She asked quietly. No more than anyone else in this city. That's not an answer. The honest answer is that I've worked very hard to make myself untouchable through legitimate means. I have lawyers, accountants, political connections. The dangerous elements of my family's legacy are being systematically dismantled and replaced with clean businesses. It's a slow process, but it's happening. Nico came to stand behind her, close, but not touching. You would never be in danger from my world, Maya. That's a promise I can make absolutely. She turned to face him. How can you promise that? Because I would burn everything I've built before I let harm come to you. The intensity in his voice made her shiver. Maya searched his face, looking for deception or manipulation, and found only raw sincerity. I need to go, she said finally. I need to think. Of course. Nico stepped back immediately, giving her space. I'll have my driver take you home. To my apartment, not the new one. I'm not ready for that yet. Wherever you want to go. They didn't speak during the ride back to Somerville. Maya sat with the envelope containing the key and address clutched in her hands, her mind a chaos of fear and possibility. When the sedan pulled up in front of her building, Nico finally broke the silence. Take the second interview at Hartwell. Build your career. The apartment will be available whenever you're ready, a week from now, a month from now, whenever. He caught her hand as she reached for the door. And Maya? I meant what I said. You can walk away at any point. I'll be disappointed, but I'll respect your choice. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice, and climbed out of the car. She didn't look back as she walked up the stairs to her apartment, but she felt his eyes on her until she disappeared inside. In the cold silence of her studio, Maya sat on her bed and stared at the envelope. A key to a better life. A doorway into something dangerous and intoxicating. An offer from a man who'd laid his truth bare and given her the power to accept or reject it. She thought about Nico's kiss, about the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, about the ossobuco, and the wine, and the conversation that had felt more real than anything she'd experienced in months, about the honesty of his confession, the risk he'd taken in revealing his family's connections. She thought about the job interview tomorrow, about Rebecca Channing's assessment that Maya's capabilities stood on their own merit, about the possibility of rebuilding not just her career but her entire life. And she thought about the alternative, rejecting Nico's help, returning to the Meridian, and the desperate scramble of survival, proving her independence at the cost of everything else. Maya pulled out her phone and sent a text before she could second-guess herself. Thank you for dinner. Thank you for your honesty. I'm going to the second interview tomorrow, and I'm going to take some time to think about everything else. But I'm not walking away. Not yet. His response came almost immediately. That's all I'm asking for. Good night, Maya. She fell asleep still wearing her clothes, the envelope with the key tucked under her pillow, and dreamed of falling into darkness only to find strong arms waiting to catch her. The second interview at Hartwell & Associates went even better than the first. Maya met with two partners who grilled her on case studies and strategic frameworks, and she felt the old confidence returning, the version of herself who'd excelled at Silverman, who'd known her worth before everything collapsed. By the time she left the building, Rebecca had already sent an email with an offer letter attached. $75,000 to start, benefits beginning day 1, a start date the following Monday. Maya accepted before she could overthink it. The weekend passed in a blur of logistics and anxiety. She gave notice at the Meridian, enduring Marcus's genuine happiness for her and the manager's irritated indifference. She packed her few belongings into boxes, said goodbye to the apartment that had represented her lowest point, and on Sunday morning she finally used the key Nico had given her. The Cambridge apartment was in a renovated brownstone near Harvard Square, 4th floor, with an elevator that actually worked and a lobby that smelled like fresh paint instead of mildew. Maya's hand shook as she unlocked the door to Unit 4C and stepped inside. The space took her breath away. Hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows. The furniture was simple but quality: a comfortable couch in soft gray, a dining table that could seat 4, a bed with an actual headboard, and linens that looked hotel crisp. The kitchen had modern appliances. The bathroom had water pressure that didn't fluctuate wildly, and the heating worked with a quiet efficiency that felt like luxury. But it was the small details that made Maya's throat tight. Fresh flowers on the counter, a coffee maker with a note that said, "Colombian roast in the cabinet, your favorite according to Marcus." A bookshelf with some of the titles she'd mentioned loving during their dinner conversation. A closet that contained not just hangers, but several professional outfits in her exact size, tags still attached, the kind of clothes that would let her walk into Hartwell looking like she belonged. Nico had been listening to everything, and he'd translated those fragments of conversation into a space that felt less like a generic apartment and more like a home designed specifically for her. Maya sat on the couch and cried, overwhelmed by gratitude and terror in equal measure. This was real. She was really doing this, accepting help from a man with organized crime connections, letting him into her life in ways that felt dangerous and inevitable. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nico. "Did you see the apartment?" "I'm here now," she typed back. "It's too much." "It's exactly enough. Do you like it?" Maya looked around the sun-filled space, at the life he'd constructed for her with such careful attention. "I love it. Thank you doesn't seem adequate." "Then have dinner with me tonight. That's thanks enough." She should have said no, should have established boundaries, taken time to adjust to all these changes before letting him further into her world. But Maya was tired of being careful, tired of protecting herself against kindness that might come with strings attached. "Where?" she sent back. "I'll cook. My place, 7 o'clock. And Maya? Bring an overnight bag if you're comfortable. Not because I'm expecting anything, but because it's supposed to snow tonight and I'd rather you not travel if the roads get bad." The invitation was carefully worded, giving her an exit while making the practical case for staying. Maya packed a bag before she could second-guess herself, including the nicest pajamas she owned and a change of clothes for Monday, just in case. Nico's driver picked her up at 6:30, the same silent man who'd been present for every interaction. This time Maya studied him more carefully in the rear-view mirror, close-cropped hair going gray at the temples, a scar that ran from his left ear down to his collar, hands on the wheel that looked like they could break bones without effort. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. The driver's eyes flicked to hers in the mirror, surprised. "Vincent, miss. How long have you worked for Nico?" 15 years, give or take." "Do you like him? As a person, I mean, not as a boss." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, navigating traffic with practiced ease. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Mr. Valenti is a good man in a world that doesn't always reward goodness. He takes care of the people loyal to him, doesn't ask for things he wouldn't do himself, and he's trying to be better than what he came from." His eyes found hers again in the mirror. "That's rare, miss. Worth holding on to." The assessment felt honest in a way that corporate praise never did. Maya nodded, filing the information away, and spent the rest of the drive watching Boston transform from her new neighborhood to Nico's wealthy enclave. He answered the door in jeans and a navy sweater, barefoot again, his hair damp like he'd recently showered. The domestic intimacy of it made Maya's stomach flip. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy. "Hi." Nico smiled and stepped aside to let her in. His eyes caught on her overnight bag, but he didn't comment, just took her coat and hung it carefully in the closet. "How was the apartment hunt?" "You know exactly how it was. You probably had reports before I even locked the door." "Vincent said you cried." Nico's expression grew concerned. Good tears or bad tears? Both, I think. Maya followed him toward the kitchen, the same route as before, already beginning to feel familiar. It's overwhelming, beautiful and overwhelming. You deserve beautiful things. He said it simply, like it was fact rather than opinion. Wine? They fell into an easy rhythm. Nico cooking while Maya sat at the kitchen island asking questions, learning the small details of his life. He'd grown up in this house, she discovered, though it had been extensively renovated since his childhood. His mother had died when he was 12, cancer that had eaten through her too fast for treatment to help. His father still lived in the family estate in Brookline, semi-retired but still wielding considerable influence. Do you see him often? Maya asked, watching Nico's hands work with easy competence, chopping vegetables with a chef's precision. Once a week for dinner. It's expected. Something in his tone suggested obligation rather than pleasure. He'll want to meet you eventually. Why would he want to meet me? Nico paused, his knife hovering over a cutting board. Because I've never brought a woman home for dinner. Because I've never talked about someone the way I apparently talk about you. Vincent mentioned my father called asking questions. He set the knife down and turned to face her fully. Because you matter to me, and my father pays attention to what matters to me. The weight of that statement settled over Maya like a blanket. We've known each other a week. Closer to 4 if you count the time I spent watching you at the Meridian like a stalker. That's not helping your case. I'm not trying to make a case. I'm telling you the truth. I knew I wanted you in my life before we ever spoke. The question was whether you'd give me a chance once you understood what that meant. Maya took a long sip of her wine, needing the fortification. And what does it mean? Beyond the apartments and the job opportunities and the expensive dinners? It means I'm going to pursue you, carefully and respectfully, but relentlessly. It means I'm going to make you believe you deserve good things by giving you good things until you stop flinching when they arrive. It means Nico moved around the island to stand in front of her, his hands settling on her knees. It means I'm asking you to take a chance on something that might be complicated and messy, but also extraordinary. You're very confident about that. I'm confident about you, about us. His thumbs traced patterns on her thighs through her jeans, the touch innocent but electric. I've spent my entire adult life managing risks and calculating outcomes. This is the first time I've wanted something badly enough not to care about the calculation. Maya's heart was racing. What if I'm not worth the risk? You are. And I'm going to prove it to you. He kissed her then, slow and deliberate, his hands coming up to frame her face like she was something precious. Maya melted into it, her arms winding around his neck, and for several long moments there was nothing but the taste of him and the feel of his body solid against hers. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Nico rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight. Not for sex, just to stay. Let me wake up knowing you're here, and safe, and choosing this. Okay, Maya whispered, the word barely audible. They ate dinner at the kitchen table again, the conversation flowing easily between comfortable silences. Nico told her about his work, legitimate businesses now, mostly real estate development and restaurant consulting, though he admitted there were still family obligations that pulled him into gray areas. Maya talked about her plans for Hartwell, her nervousness about starting fresh, her hope that this time she could build something stable. You will, Nico said with absolute certainty. You're brilliant and determined. They're lucky to have you. Rebecca said someone vouched for me, but the job was mine on merit. It was. I just made sure you got in the room. He refilled her wine glass. There's a difference between opening doors and walking through them. I can't do the work for you, Maya. I can only make sure you get the opportunity to do it yourself. It was a distinction that mattered, and Maya appreciated that he understood why. She'd spent so much of her life fighting to prove herself, to earn what she had, and the idea of success that came purely from connections felt hollow, but using connections to get a fair shot at proving herself that she could accept. After dinner, Nico showed her to a guest room on the second floor. It was beautiful, like everything else in the house. 4-poster bed with soft linens, an ensuite bathroom with towels so plush they felt decadent, a window seat overlooking the garden. My room is at the end of the hall if you need anything, Nico said from the doorway. But Maya, you don't have to stay in here if you don't want to. I meant what I said about no expectations, but if you'd rather not be alone, my door is open. That's dangerous, Maya said quietly. Why? Because I might take you up on it, and then we'll cross lines I'm not sure I'm ready to cross. Nico's smile was soft. Then we won't cross them. I've slept next to women before without it meaning sex, Maya. I'm capable of restraint. I'm not sure I am. The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Nico's expression shifted, heat replacing gentleness, and Maya saw him war with himself before stepping back. Then I'll make it easy for you. Stay in here tonight. Get comfortable with being in my house, in my world, before we complicate things further. He paused in the doorway. But know that when you are ready, whenever that is, I'll be there. Patient and absolutely sure. He left before Maya could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. She stood in the beautiful guest room, feeling the absence of him like a physical ache and wondering how she'd gotten here so fast, wanting a man she barely knew with an intensity that terrified her. Maya got ready for bed slowly, washing her face with products from the bathroom that were exactly her preferred brands, changing into pajamas that felt inadequate for the luxury surrounding her. She climbed into bed and tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't quiet. At midnight, she gave up and padded down the hallway in bare feet. Nico's door was cracked open, soft light spilling into the corridor. She knocked gently. Come in. He was sitting up in bed reading, wearing only pajama pants, his chest bare and distractingly beautiful. The room was masculine, but not aggressively so. Dark wood furniture, navy bedding, more books than she'd expected stacked on the nightstand. Can't sleep? Nico asked, setting his book aside. Too many thoughts. Maya hovered in the doorway, uncertain. You said your door was open. It is. Always. He pulled back the covers on the other side of the bed in invitation. Come here. Maya climbed in beside him, her heart pounding, expecting him to reach for her immediately. Instead, Nico simply turned off the light and settled back against the pillows, one arm extended in clear invitation. Maya curled against his side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Tell me something true, she said into the darkness. Something you haven't told anyone else. Nico was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then his hand came up to stroke her hair, gentle and rhythmic. I'm tired of being what my family expects me to be, of managing legacies and obligations I never asked for, of existing in the space between legitimate and criminal, never fully one or the other. His voice was low, almost painful in its honesty. You're the first person I've met who sees me as just Nico. Not the Valenti heir, not someone useful for connections. Just a man who cooks Italian food and reads too much and wants desperately to be good enough for someone who deserves better. Maya's throat tightened. She pressed a kiss to his chest right over his heart. You are good enough. You're more than good enough. You don't know everything about me yet. Then tell me. The bad parts, the complicated parts. All of it. Nico's arm tightened around her. My father is going to invite us to dinner. Probably this week. It won't be optional and it won't be comfortable. He's going to evaluate you like a business acquisition, trying to determine if you're an asset or a liability to the family. And if he decides I'm a liability, then I'll tell him his opinion doesn't matter. But Maya, Nico shifted so he could look at her, even in the darkness. You need to understand what you're walking into. My father is old school, traditional. He believes in the family business in all its forms, and he won't understand why I'm trying to distance myself from that legacy. He's going to see you as either a tool to bring me back in line or a distraction that needs to be eliminated. Fear spiked through Maya's chest. Eliminated how? Not violently. My father doesn't operate that way anymore. Too risky, too visible. But he has other methods, financial pressure, social manipulation, leveraging connections to make your life difficult. Nico's hand cupped her face. I won't let any of that touch you. But you need to know it's possible. Why are you telling me this now? Because tomorrow he's going to call and extend the dinner invitation, and I want you to make an informed choice about whether to accept. You can say no. We can avoid this complication for as long as possible. Or you can say yes and let me show you I can protect you from my world even as I bring you into it. Maya thought about the apartment, the job, the way Nico had transformed her life in a week. She thought about Vincent's assessment that Nico was trying to be better than what he came from, and she thought about the man currently holding her in the darkness, his heart steady beneath her palm, his honesty offered without hesitation. "I'll go to dinner," she said finally. "I want to meet your father." "You don't have to do this." "I know, but if I'm going to be part of your life, if we're going to see where this goes, I can't hide from the complicated parts. That wouldn't be fair to either of us." Nico kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. "You're braver than you know." "Or more foolish." "No. Brave." His arms tightened around her. "Sleep now. Tomorrow brings enough challenges without facing them exhausted." Maya drifted off, listening to his heartbeat, feeling safer than she had in months despite the warnings he'd delivered. When she woke in the early morning light, Nico was still asleep, his face relaxed and younger without the weight of consciousness. She studied him in the dawn, the sharp line of his jaw, the dark lashes against his cheeks, the slight furrow between his brows, even in sleep. This was the man she was falling for. Complicated, dangerous, achingly tender. And she was choosing him anyway. Nico's eyes opened slowly, focusing on her with immediate awareness. "Hi." "Hi," Maya smiled. "You were right about the snow." He glanced toward the window where fat flakes were falling steadily, already accumulating several inches on the sill. "Stay today? Work can wait. Call in. Take a personal day before you even start." "That's terrible advice." "It's practical advice. The roads are going to be a disaster, and you have a perfectly good apartment to get settled into tomorrow." Nico's hand traced down her arm. "Some. Besides, I make excellent breakfast, and there's a fireplace in the study that's perfect for snowy mornings." Maya knew she should protest, should maintain some semblance of independence and boundaries, but the alternative was navigating dangerous roads to an apartment she hadn't finished unpacking, spending the day alone when she could spend it here in warmth and comfort and Nico's distracting presence. "Okay," she said, "but I'm helping with breakfast." They cooked together in easy synchronization, Nico handling the omelet while Maya managed coffee and toast, their movements coordinating without discussion like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. The domesticity of it felt surreal, a glimpse of a life Maya hadn't known she wanted until it was right in front of her. After breakfast, they settled in the study exactly as Nico had suggested. The fireplace crackled with real wood, the snow fell steadily outside tall windows, and Maya curled into the corner of a leather couch with a book Nico recommended while he worked on his laptop at the desk. The silence was comfortable, companionable, broken only by the occasional comment or question. Around noon, Nico's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "It's my father," he said to Maya. "I need to take this." She nodded, watching as he answered with professional courtesy that felt impersonal compared to how he spoke with her. "Yes, I'm aware of the weather. No, I'm not at the office. I'm working from home." A pause, his eyes finding Maya's across the room. "Actually, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Would Thursday work for dinner at the estate?" Maya's stomach dropped. This was happening, really happening. Nico listened to whatever his father said, his expression unreadable. "Her name is Maya Hart. She's important to me, and I'd appreciate you treating her as such." Another pause, this one longer. "No, this isn't business. This is personal." The way he said it, firm and final, made Maya's chest tighten. Nico was drawing a line in the sand with his father, claiming her as something separate from family obligations and strategic alliances. "Thursday at 7. We'll be there." Nico ended the call and set his phone down with deliberate care. "Well, that's done?" "What did he say?" "That he looks forward to meeting you, and that I should bring you early so you can see the estate before dinner." Nico's smile was tight. Translation: he wants time to evaluate you without the buffer of a formal meal. You don't have to sound so thrilled about it. I'm not. My father is brilliant and ruthless and deeply invested in maintaining control over every aspect of our family's operations. You represent something he can't control. My choice, my life separate from his expectations. He's going to try to understand you, categorize you, determine how to use you to his advantage. Maya set her book aside and crossed to where Nico sat. She perched on the edge of his desk, forcing him to look at her. And what are you going to do? Make sure he understands that you're not a pawn in whatever game he's playing, that hurting you or manipulating you means losing me entirely. Nico's hand found her knee, his touch grounding. My father values family above everything. If I make it clear that you are family to me, that my loyalty to you supersedes my loyalty to his plans, he'll respect that, eventually. You sound very certain. I am certain. About you, about this, about what I'm willing to sacrifice to keep you safe. His eyes held hers with burning intensity. Maya, I need you to understand something. The moment you accepted my help, the moment you walked through my door, you became mine to protect. That's not possessiveness, it's fact, and my father will recognize that whether he likes it or not. The declaration should have felt controlling, oppressive. Instead, it felt like safety, like someone finally standing between Maya and the world that had spent months trying to break her. Okay, she said quietly. I trust you. You shouldn't. Not completely. Not yet. Nico pulled her down into his lap, his arms wrapping around her waist. But I'm going to earn that trust, day by day, choice by choice, until you believe me when I say I'd do anything to keep you safe. They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other while the snow fell outside and the fire crackled in its grate. Maya felt the last of her resistance crumbling, the walls she'd built to protect herself becoming irrelevant in the face of Nico's steady certainty. Tell me about the estate, she said finally. What should I expect? Nico described his childhood home in careful detail, a sprawling property in Brookline with formal gardens, a guest house that currently sheltered his father's security team, rooms filled with art and antiques that represented generations of accumulated wealth. His father, Antonio Valenti, was 72 but sharp as ever, a man who'd built an empire through intelligence and strategic ruthlessness. His mother, Elena, had been the softening influence, but she'd been gone for 23 years now. He never remarried? Maya asked. No. He said once that my mother was irreplaceable, and he meant it. Something sad crossed Nico's face. I think that's the only purely good thing I can say about him. He loved her completely. Everything else is complicated. Like what? Like the fact that he's funded my legitimate businesses but also expects me to maintain family connections that aren't legitimate. Like the fact that he's proud of my success but disappointed I won't fully embrace the legacy he wants to leave me. Like the fact that he'd probably kill for me without hesitation, but also views me primarily as the heir rather than as his son. Maya turned in Nico's lap to face him more fully. And what do you want from him? Permission to walk away, to build something that's entirely mine, entirely clean, without the weight of family history attached. Nico's laugh was bitter. But that's not how it works in my world. You don't just leave. You're born into it, and it follows you until you die. Unless you make it not follow you. That's what I'm trying to do, slowly, carefully, in ways that don't spark a war with the old guard who think the traditional methods are still viable. His hand cupped her face. You're part of that plan, even if you don't realize it yet. How? Because you're proof that I can have a life outside the family business, that I can care about someone who has nothing to do with our world and everything to do with who I actually want to be. Nico's thumb brushed her lower lip. My father is going to see you as either a weakness to exploit or evidence that I'm truly moving away from his control. I'm betting on the latter. And if you're wrong, then I'll handle it. But Maya, no matter what happens at that dinner, no matter what my father says or does, remember that you have power too. The power to walk away if this becomes more than you bargained for. The power to demand that I choose between you and family obligations. I'm asking you not to use that power lightly, but it's yours all the same. The honesty was devastating in its completeness. Nico was giving her an escape route even as he asked her to stay, acknowledging her agency in a situation where she could easily feel powerless. I'm not going to walk away, Maya said firmly. Not unless you give me a reason to. And honesty isn't a reason. It's exactly what I need. Nico kissed her then, deep and claiming, his hands tangling in her hair. Maya kissed back with equal intensity, channeling her fear and determination and growing affection into the press of her mouth against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with want. "I should stop," he said roughly, "before I can't." "What if I don't want you to stop?" "Then I'd remind you that we agreed to take this slow, that sex complicates things, and we have enough complications already." His grip on her hips tightened, contradicting his words. "And I'd probably fail to convince either of us." Maya laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. "You're right, we should slow down. Absolute last thing I want to do." "Me too." She climbed off his lap reluctantly, putting physical distance between them. "But you're right about complications. Let's get through dinner with your father before we add sex to the equation." Practical and wise. I hate it. They spent the rest of the day in careful restraint, maintaining physical distance while conversation flowed easily. Nico told her stories about growing up in Boston, about his mother's garden and his father's expectations, about the moment he'd realized the family business wasn't what he wanted for his life. Maya shared pieces of her own history, her mother's strength through illness, her ex's betrayal, the slow erosion of stability that had led her to the Meridian. By the time evening arrived, the snow had stopped and the city was blanketed in white. Nico's driver appeared to take Maya back to Cambridge, and she gathered her things with reluctance. "Thank you," she said at the door. "For the apartment, for today, for all of it. Thank you for staying, for trusting me enough to sleep beside me, for agreeing to meet my father even knowing how complicated it might be." Nico pulled her close, his embrace warm and solid. "Thursday night. I'll pick you up at 6. I'll be ready." "Maya?" He caught her hand as she turned to leave. "Whatever happens at that dinner, remember that you're not alone in this. I'm right there with you." The promise steadied her through the drive home, through the process of unpacking boxes in her beautiful new apartment, through the anxiety that kept her awake long after she should have been sleeping. Thursday was coming, and with it the moment when Maya would step fully into Nico's complicated world. She'd chosen this path. Now she had to walk it and hope that Nico's protection was as absolute as he claimed. Because once she met Antonio Valenti, once she was recognized as part of Nico's life, there would be no going back to anonymity and safety. The die was cast. All that remained was to see how it would land. Maya's first week at Hartwell and Associates passed in a whirlwind of onboarding meetings, client introductions, and the steep learning curve of a new position. Rebecca proved to be an exacting but fair supervisor, pushing Maya hard while acknowledging her contributions. By Wednesday evening, Maya had already contributed meaningful insights to 2 client strategy sessions and earned nods of approval from the partners who'd interviewed her. The work was consuming enough that she could almost forget about Thursday's dinner. Almost. Nico called every night, their conversations ranging from an hour to 3, talking about everything and nothing. He never asked about work specifics, seemed to understand that she needed to keep that part of her life separate, proof that she'd earned her position regardless of his influence. Instead, they talked about books and childhood memories, favorite foods and irrational fears, building the foundation of genuine knowledge that relationships required. On Wednesday night, as Maya was reviewing client materials in her apartment, Nico's tone shifted to something more serious. "I need to prepare you for tomorrow," he said. "My father is going to ask questions that feel invasive. About your family, your finances, your intentions toward me. He's going to try to determine if you're with me for money or status, or if there's something genuine here." "And how should I answer?" "Honestly." "He'll know if you're performing." Nico paused. "But Maya, there's something else. Someone else who'll be there tomorrow that I haven't mentioned." Her stomach tightened. "Who?" "James Caruso. He's a detective with the Boston PD, Organized Crime Division. He's also my father's godson and has been circling our family for years trying to build a case." Nico's voice was carefully controlled. "My father inviting him to dinner is a power play, showing that he's untouchable, that even law enforcement sits at his table as a guest rather than an adversary." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Caruso is going to see you as either a victim who needs saving or a potential informant. He's going to try to get you alone, to plant seeds of doubt about my family and what being with me means." Nico's voice hardened. "I need you to be careful around him, not rude, Not obviously defensive, but guarded. Don't answer questions about my business or my activities. Polite deflection only. Maya's mouth went dry. This is insane, Nico. You're telling me I'm going to have dinner with your mob-connected father and the detective investigating your family? Yes, and I'm telling you because I need you to walk in with your eyes open. This isn't just a family dinner, it's theater. My father showing his control, Caruso showing his persistence, and you and me caught in the middle proving that we're stronger than their games. What if I'm not strong enough? You are. You've survived everything life has thrown at you and kept fighting. One dinner with difficult men is nothing compared to what you've already endured. His voice softened. And I'll be right there. The moment anything feels wrong, we leave. My father's disapproval be damned. Maya spent Thursday at work in a fog of anxiety, making it through client meetings on autopilot while her mind spun through scenarios for the evening ahead. Rebecca noticed her distraction during their afternoon check-in. Everything all right? You seem somewhere else today. Just nervous about plans tonight, Maya admitted. Rebecca's expression shifted to something knowing. Let me guess, meeting the family? How did you? Because I've seen that exact look on dozens of faces. The terror of being evaluated by people whose opinion matters to someone you care about. Rebecca's smile was kind. My advice? Be yourself. If they don't appreciate who you are, that's their failure, not yours. The words helped, though Maya suspected Rebecca would feel differently if she knew exactly whose family Maya was about to meet. Nico arrived at 6 precisely, emerging from the sedan in a dark suit that made him look dangerous and elegant in equal measure. His eyes swept over Maya's appearance, a simple black dress, the nicest one from the clothing he'd provided, paired with heels that added 3 inches to her height, and his expression warmed. You look beautiful, he said, handing her into the car. I look terrified. That too, but beautiful first. Nico settled beside her, his hand finding hers immediately. Remember what I told you. Answer honestly, deflect Caruso's questions, and stay close to me. And Maya? He waited until she met his eyes. No matter what my father says about you or me or us, remember that his opinion doesn't define our relationship. Only we do that. The drive to Brookline took 30 minutes through early evening traffic. Maya watched the neighborhood shift from middle class to wealthy to obscenely wealthy, the houses growing larger and more secluded until they turned through iron gates into a property that looked like something from a European estate catalog. The Valenti estate sprawled across what had to be several acres, a main house that was more mansion than home, manicured gardens even in late November, outbuildings that probably housed staff and security. Lights blazed from every window despite the early hour, and several expensive cars were already parked in the circular drive. How many people are coming to this dinner? Maya asked faintly. Just us, my father, and Caruso. The cars belong to household staff and security. Nico helped her from the sedan, his hand settling at the small of her back. The staff will serve dinner but won't linger. My father values privacy for important conversations. They were met at the door by a woman in her 50s who greeted Nico with obvious affection and Maya with professional courtesy. Your father's in the study. He asked that you join him before dinner. Nico's jaw tightened fractionally, but he nodded. They followed the woman, the housekeeper, Maya realized, through a foyer that featured marble floors and a staircase that could have accommodated a small wedding party. The house was beautiful in an intimidating way, filled with art that probably cost more than Maya would earn in a lifetime, and furniture that looked antique and priceless. The study was at the back of the house, wood-paneled and lined with books, dominated by a massive desk and the man sitting behind it. Antonio Valenti stood as they entered, and Maya understood immediately where Nico had gotten his presence. The older man was shorter than his son, his dark hair gone silver, but he radiated the same quiet authority, the sense that he was assessing and cataloging everything with ruthless efficiency. Nico. Antonio's voice was deep, accented with the faintest trace of Italian. His eyes shifted to Maya. And you must be Maya Hart. Mr. Valenti, thank you for inviting me to your home. Maya extended her hand and Antonio took it, his grip firm but brief. Please call me Antonio. Anyone important to my son is welcome here. He gestured to chairs arranged near a fireplace. Sit. We have time before Caruso arrives, and I'd like to get to know you. It wasn't a request. Maya settled into the indicated chair with Nico beside her, feeling Antonio's gaze like a physical weight. The older man poured 3 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter, handing them out before taking his own seat across from them. So, Maya, Nico tells me you're from Ohio originally. What brought you to Boston? The question seemed innocent enough. Maya answered carefully, explaining her college choice, her early career, the circumstances that had led to her current situation. Antonio listened with focused attention, occasionally asking follow-up questions that revealed he already knew most of this information and was simply testing whether she'd lie. And your family? Your mother is unwell, I understand. She has chronic health issues, yes. She's managing, but it's been difficult financially. Medical care in this country is criminally expensive. Antonio's expression suggested genuine sympathy. I assume Nico has offered to help with those expenses? Maya glanced at Nico, uncertain how to answer. He gave a slight nod. Permission to be honest. He's offered. I haven't accepted yet. Antonio's eyebrows rose. Why not? Pride? Partly. Also because I don't want my mother's health to become another debt I owe. Maya met his gaze directly. Your son has been very generous. I'm still trying to understand what that generosity costs. A smile ghosted across Antonio's face, there and gone. Smart girl. Nico, where did you find her? She found herself. I just paid attention. Nico's hand settled on Maya's knee, a subtle claim of protection and connection. And what are your intentions toward my son, Maya? The blunt question hung in the air. Maya considered lying, softening the truth, but remembered Nico's advice about Antonio detecting performance. Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. I care about him. I'm attracted to him. But we've known each other less than 2 weeks, and there's a significant power imbalance between us that makes me cautious about long-term intentions. You think he has power over you? I think he has resources I don't, connections I don't, and influence I don't. That creates imbalance whether we acknowledge it or not. Maya paused. But I also think he's aware of that imbalance and trying to mitigate it, which suggests he's serious about building something real rather than just exercising control. Antonio studied her for a long moment, then looked at his son. She's not what I expected. What did you expect? Nico's tone was carefully neutral. Someone more easily impressed, more willing to overlook complications in exchange for security. Antonio took a sip of his whiskey. Instead, you've brought me a woman who questions everything and isn't afraid to name uncomfortable truths. I approve. The pronouncement seemed to shift something in the room's atmosphere. Nico's shoulders relaxed fractionally, and Maya allowed herself to breathe. However, Antonio continued, his gaze returning to Maya, you should understand what you're involving yourself in. My son is trying very hard to distance himself from certain aspects of our family business. This is admirable, but also naive. There are obligations that don't disappear simply because we wish them to. Connections that will follow Nico, regardless of how legitimate his operations become. I understand that. Do you? Do you understand that being with Nico means accepting that his past, our family's past, will always cast shadows? That there will be questions you can't ask and answers he can't give? That the life you're building with him will never be entirely free of complications? Maya felt Nico tense beside her, but she kept her focus on Antonio. I understand that nothing worth having is simple. And I understand that Nico is trying to be better than his circumstances, which is more than most people can say. If that comes with complications, I'd rather face them with him than have simplicity with someone else. Antonio's smile was genuine this time, transforming his severe features. Nico, you've done well, very well. He raised his glass in a small toast. Welcome to the family, Maya, such as it is. Before either of them could respond, the housekeeper appeared in the doorway. Detective Caruso has arrived. The warmth evaporated from Antonio's expression, replaced by cool calculation. Show him in. And Maria, please inform the kitchen we'll be dining in 20 minutes. James Caruso was younger than Maya had expected, early 40s, with the kind of lean build that came from running rather than gym work. His suit was off the rack, but well-maintained, his handshake firm when Antonio made introductions. His eyes lingered on Maya with open curiosity and something that might have been concern. "Ms. Hart, pleasure to meet you." "Detective." Maya kept her response polite but brief, remembering Nico's warnings. They moved to the dining room, a space that could have seated 20 but was set for 4, the table arrangement forcing intimacy despite the formal setting. Antonio took the head of the table with Caruso to his right, leaving Nico and Maya on the left. The positioning felt strategic, like chess pieces arranged for maximum tactical advantage. Dinner began with careful small talk, questions about Maya's work at Hartwell, Caruso's comments about the weather, Antonio's observations about the city's development projects. The food was excellent, served by silent staff who appeared and disappeared with practiced efficiency. Maya tried to eat despite her churning stomach, hyper-aware of Caruso's assessing gaze. It was during the second course that Caruso made his move. "So Maya, how did you and Nico meet? It's rare to see him with anyone, let alone someone outside his usual circles." The question was casual, but the intent was clear, probing for information about their relationship, looking for inconsistencies or red flags. "At the Meridian," Maya said simply. "I was working there. He was a customer." "The bar in the financial district? Interesting choice of venue for someone of Nico's position." Caruso's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though I suppose it makes sense if you're looking to meet people outside the family sphere." "James?" Antonio's voice carried warning. "This is a family dinner, not an interrogation." "Just making conversation, Antonio. No harm in getting to know the newest addition to your inner circle." Caruso turned his attention back to Maya. "You should know, Ms. Hart, that the Valenti family has a complicated history in this city. I'm sure Nico has told you some of it, but there's likely quite a bit he's left out." "James, that's enough." Nico's voice was hard, dangerous in a way Maya hadn't heard before. "Is it?" "Because I'd hate for Ms. Hart to get involved in something she doesn't fully understand. The last serious woman in your life, what was her name? Lena? She disappeared rather suddenly. Hasn't been seen in years." Caruso's eyes were sharp on Maya's face, watching for her reaction. The name hit Maya like ice water. Nico had mentioned past relationships in passing, but never with details, never with names, and the way Caruso said disappeared suggested something far darker than a normal breakup. "Lena Kwan left Boston of her own volition," Nico said, his hand finding Maya's under the table and squeezing tight. "She wanted out of the city, out of her life here, and I helped her make that happen. There was nothing sinister about it. Funny how nobody's seen or heard from her since. No social media presence, no contact with old friends or family, almost like she vanished." Caruso leaned back in his chair. "Makes you wonder what really happened, doesn't it, Ms. Hart?" Maya's mind was racing. This was exactly what Nico had warned her about, Caruso planting doubts, suggesting dark possibilities designed to drive a wedge between them. But the mention of a disappeared girlfriend was more than just suggestion. It was a real question that deserved a real answer. "What I wonder," Maya said carefully, "is why you're more interested in a woman who left years ago than in having a pleasant dinner. If you have actual questions about past events, perhaps you should ask them directly, rather than making insinuations designed to frighten me." Caruso's eyebrows rose. "You're not frightened?" "I'm cautious. There's a difference." Maya met his gaze steadily. "And I'm smart enough to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate me with partial information." "Then let me give you complete information." Caruso pulled out his phone, scrolling through something before turning the screen toward Maya. "Lena Kwan, age 28 when she disappeared 4 years ago. Dated Nico for approximately 8 months. Last seen leaving his townhouse on March 15th. Her apartment was cleared out within a week, her lease terminated, her car sold. Her family filed a missing persons report that went nowhere because technically she's not missing. She withdrew her savings, closed her accounts, and left voluntarily. But here's the thing. Nobody just vanishes that completely unless they're running from something or someone made them vanish." Maya looked at the photo on Caruso's phone. The woman was beautiful. Asian features, long dark hair, a smile that suggested intelligence and warmth. She looked happy. She looked alive. "James, I invited you here as a courtesy, but you're abusing that courtesy. Antonio's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Maya is a guest in my home. She deserves respect, not intimidation. I'm trying to help her. Caruso pocketed his phone, his attention returning to Maya. Ms. Hart, I've been investigating the Valenti family for 6 years. I know what they're capable of, the connections they maintain, the way people who become inconvenient tend to disappear or have accidents. I'm not saying Nico is directly responsible for anything illegal. He's very careful to keep his hands clean. But his family, his father's associates, they operate in shadows that Nico benefits from, whether he acknowledges it or not. And you're telling me this because you care about my welfare? Maya kept her voice level, despite the fear creeping up her spine. I'm telling you this because you seem like a decent person who's gotten involved in something complicated. I'd hate to see you become another cautionary tale. Caruso stood, dropping his napkin on the table. Antonio, thank you for dinner. Nico, Ms. Hart, I hope you'll think carefully about what I've said. He left without waiting for a response, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, followed by the sound of the front door closing. The three of them sat in loaded silence, the remainder of their meal cooling on fine china. Antonio spoke first. Nico, I think you need to have a private conversation with Maya. I'll have coffee sent to the library. It wasn't a suggestion. Nico stood, offering Maya his hand, and led her through the house to a smaller room lined with books and comfortable furniture. A fire burned in the grate, casting dancing shadows across the walls. They sat together on a leather couch, Nico's hands clasping hers tightly. Ask me, he said quietly. Whatever you want to know about Lena, ask me. Maya's throat was tight. Did you love her? I cared about her. I don't know if I loved her. I'm not sure I knew what love was back then. Nico's eyes held hers. She was smart, ambitious, working for a tech startup that was going places. We met at a fundraiser, dated for about 8 months. It was good at first. What changed? She figured out who my family was, what we were connected to, and instead of being afraid or wanting out, she wanted in. Nico's expression darkened. Lena saw opportunity, connections she could leverage for her company, protection from competitors, access to resources most startups only dream of. She pushed me to introduce her to my father, to his associates, to use my family's influence to advance her career. And you refused? I refused. I'd spent years trying to separate myself from that world, and I wasn't about to drag someone I cared about into it just because she thought it would benefit her. Nico's grip on Maya's hands tightened. We fought about it constantly. She accused me of being weak, of wasting my family's power. I accused her of being willing to sell her soul for success. It became toxic. So she left? Not exactly. Nico took a breath, clearly choosing his words carefully. About a month before she disappeared, Lena came to me terrified. She'd taken meetings with some of my father's associates without my knowledge, trying to negotiate deals for her company. But she'd gotten in over her head, made promises she couldn't keep, borrowed money from people you don't borrow from, and then can't repay. She was facing serious consequences. Maya's stomach twisted. What kind of consequences? The kind that end careers or lives depending on how generous the creditors are feeling. Nico's voice was flat. She begged me to help, to use my family connections to clear her debts and get her out of the agreement she'd made. I could have said no. She'd created this mess herself by ignoring my warnings. But I couldn't let her face those consequences. So you helped her. I paid her debts and called in favors to extract her from the agreements. But it wasn't enough to just erase her mistakes. The people she dealt with would always see her as a potential asset or liability. She'd never be safe in Boston. Nico met Maya's eyes. So I gave her what she asked for, a new life, new identity, new city, money to start over somewhere nobody knew her name or her history. She wanted escape, and I provided it. Just like that? She asked, and you made her disappear? I had the resources and the connections to do it safely. And Maya, Nico's voice softened. She wanted to disappear, begged me to help her vanish completely. I didn't force her or harm her. I gave her exactly what she asked for. Maya pulled her hands free, needing space to think. She stood and paced to the fireplace, staring into the flames while her mind processed everything. You lied to Caruso. You told him she was family when she was actually your girlfriend who you helped disappear. Yes, because the truth would have opened investigations I couldn't afford and put Lena at risk. If Caruso knew I'd helped her vanish, he'd have assumed I'd done something illegal or violent. The lie protected both of us. And you're telling me now because? Because you asked for honesty. Because I don't want secrets between us, especially not ones that Caruso can use as weapons. Nico moved behind her, close, but not touching. Maya, I won't lie to you. Not about my past, not about my family, not about the complicated choices I've made to survive in my world. But I need you to understand, Lena is alive and safe and living the life she wanted. I didn't harm her. I saved her. Maya turned to face him. Can you prove that? Not without risking her safety. Her entire new identity depends on nobody knowing where she is or who she became. Nico's expression was anguished. I'm asking you to trust me without proof, to believe me when I say I would never hurt someone I cared about, no matter how badly our relationship ended. That's a lot to ask. I know, but it's the only thing I can ask. I can't produce Lena without destroying the life I helped her build, and I won't do that, even to convince you of my innocence. Maya studied his face, looking for deception or evasion. She saw only raw honesty and desperate hope that she'd believe him despite the impossibility of verification. I need time, she said finally, to think about all of this. About Lena, about Caruso's warnings, about what being with you actually means. I understand. Nico's voice was thick with emotion he was clearly fighting to control. Take whatever time you need, but Maya, please don't let Caruso's suspicions poison what we're building. He sees everything through the lens of his investigation. He can't imagine that people in my world are capable of genuine relationships or moral choices. And are you? Capable of genuine relationships? With you, yes. Absolutely, yes. Nico reached for her hand tentatively, relief flooding his features when she let him take it. Maya, you're the first person in my life who makes me want to be better than what I came from. Who makes me believe I can be better. That matters more to me than you know. Maya wanted to believe him, wanted to accept his explanation about Lena and move forward. But Caruso's warnings echoed in her mind, mixing with the very real fact that Nico had lied to law enforcement about his relationship with a woman who'd subsequently vanished. I need to go home, she said quietly. I can't think clearly here. Of course, I'll have Vincent. No, I'll take an Uber. I need space, Nico. Real space. Not just the illusion of it while riding in your car. Pain flickered across his features, but he nodded. Okay, whatever you need. He pulled out his phone and handed it to her. Use my account. I don't want you paying for the ride. I can afford an Uber. I know you can, but let me do this one small thing, please. Maya took the phone and ordered the car, waiting in tense silence while it arrived. Nico walked her to the door, his hand lingering on the small of her back, like he was trying to memorize the feeling of touching her. Maya. He caught her wrist gently before she could step outside. I love you. I know it's too soon to say that. I know it sounds desperate, but I need you to know. Whatever you decide about us, whatever conclusions you come to about my past, I love you. That's not manipulation or strategy. It's just truth. The declaration should have made everything better. Instead, it made everything more complicated. Maya extracted her wrist carefully and stepped into the cold November night without responding. The Uber ride back to Cambridge felt endless. Maya stared out the window watching Boston slide past, her mind spinning through everything she'd learned tonight. Antonio's approval, which had felt like victory until Caruso's revelations. The mention of Lena Kwan, a woman who'd gotten involved with Nico and subsequently vanished. Nico's explanation, which was either honest accounting or a carefully constructed lie. And underneath it all, the memory of Nico saying, I love you, with such raw sincerity that Maya's heart had cracked. In her apartment, beautiful, expensive, provided by a man who might be exactly what he claimed or might be far more dangerous, Maya sat on her couch and tried to decide what she believed. Nico had been honest about his family's connections from the start, had never pretended to be something other than what he was, had given her opportunities to walk away at every turn. That suggested someone trying to do right by her despite his circumstances. but he'd also lied to law enforcement about Lena. Had the resources to make a person disappear completely, moved in a world where consequences for inconvenient people ranged from financial ruin to worse. That suggested someone capable of dangerous choices regardless of intention. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it to find a message from Caruso. "Ms. Hart, I'm sorry for ambushing you tonight, but I meant what I said. I'm concerned for your safety. If you want to talk, to ask questions about the Valenti family that Nico won't answer honestly, call me anytime. You deserve to make informed choices about your life." Below the message was his phone number and a file attachment. Maya hesitated, then opened the file. It was a police report about Lena Kwan's disappearance, witness statements, timeline of events, the dead ends that had ultimately closed the investigation. The last entry noted that while there was no evidence of foul play, the circumstances remained suspicious, and the case stayed open pending new information. Maya set her phone down and buried her face in her hands. She'd thought accepting Nico's help would solve her problems. Instead, she'd traded one set of complications for another far more dangerous: financial ruin for moral ambiguity, desperation for a relationship built on power, imbalance, and secrets. The question was what to do about it. Walk away and return to the precarious existence she'd escaped? Stay and accept that being with Nico meant living with unanswered questions and possible danger? Demand proof of Lena's safety before continuing the relationship? Maya didn't sleep that night, lying in expensive sheets in an apartment she hadn't earned, trying to decide if the man she was falling for was her salvation or her destruction. By morning, she still didn't have an answer, but she knew she needed one before this went any further. Because Caruso was right about one thing: she deserved to make informed choices. And right now, she didn't have enough information to know if staying with Nico was the bravest decision of her life or the biggest mistake. Maya didn't call Nico the next day, or the day after that. She threw herself into work at Hartwell, channeling her confusion and fear into client presentations and strategy documents that earned her praise from Rebecca and the partners. The routine of professional competence felt like solid ground beneath her feet when everything else was shifting sand. But Nico's declaration echoed constantly in her mind. "I love you." 3 words that should have been a gift but felt instead like a weight she wasn't ready to carry. On Saturday morning, Maya finally opened the police report Caruso had sent. She read through every witness statement, every timeline notation, forcing herself to confront the facts rather than Nico's explanation. Lena Kwan had indeed dated Nico for 8 months, had indeed been last seen leaving his townhouse, had indeed liquidated her assets and vanished within a week of that final sighting. What the report didn't show was evidence of harm: no blood, no struggle, no indication that Lena had left against her will. Just the suspicious tidiness of a disappearance that was either meticulously planned or carefully orchestrated by someone with resources. Maya was reading the report for the 3rd time when her phone rang. Nico's name on the screen made her heart lurch. "Hi," she answered, her voice uncertain. "Hi." He sounded exhausted. "I know you need space. I'm trying to respect that. But Maya, I need you to know something." "What?" "I'm going to prove to you that Lena is alive and safe. I don't know how yet without compromising her security, but I'll find a way. Because I can't lose you over something that happened years ago with someone else." "Nico, please just listen." His voice was raw. "I've spent the last 3 days trying to figure out how to give you the proof you need while keeping Lena protected. And I think I've found a solution. It's going to take a week, maybe 2, but I can do this. I can show you she's alive without exposing where she is or who she became." Maya's throat tightened. "How?" "I'd rather explain in person. Can I see you? Just for coffee, somewhere public. 30 minutes of your time." She should say no. Should maintain the distance she'd established, protect herself from falling further into his orbit before she had clarity. But the desperate hope in his voice undermined her resolve. "The coffee shop on Mass Avenue. 1 hour. I'll be there. Thank you, Maya." She dressed carefully in jeans and a sweater, armor of casualness that felt safer than the professional clothes or the dresses Nico had seen her in. The coffee shop was busy with weekend crowds, providing the public setting she'd requested. Maya arrived early and claimed a corner table, ordering a latte she didn't want just to have something to do with her hands. Nico appeared exactly on time, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He'd dressed down too, jeans and a leather jacket over a simple shirt, but the shadows under his eyes and the tension in his shoulders told the real story. He bought his own coffee before joining her, sitting across the small table with careful distance between them. "Thank you for meeting me," he said quietly. "You said you could prove Lena is alive." "I can. Not immediately, but soon." Nico pulled out his phone and showed her a contact entry. Just a phone number, no name attached. "This is a secure line that reaches an intermediary, someone Lena and I both trust who can facilitate communication without compromising her location or identity. I'm going to ask this person to arrange a video call between Lena and someone neutral. Not me, not you initially, but someone who can verify she's alive and well." "A neutral party like who?" "I was thinking Caruso, actually." At Maya's startled expression, Nico continued, "He's been investigating Lena's disappearance for years. If he confirms she's alive and chose to leave voluntarily, that carries more weight than anything I could tell you. He has no reason to lie for me." Maya's mind raced through the implications. Caruso would never agree to that without getting something in return. Information, access, something. "I know. Which is why I'm prepared to offer him a trade." Nico's expression was grim. "I'll give him information about some of my father's associates. Nothing that would directly implicate my father, but enough to advance his investigation into the peripheral operations. In exchange, he verifies Lena's safety and agrees to stop using her disappearance as a weapon against our relationship." "You'd betray your father's associates for me?" "I'd prioritize your trust over loyalties I never wanted in the first place." Nico's hand moved toward hers across the table but stopped short of touching. "Maya, I've spent my entire adult life trying to extract myself from my family's world. This is just accelerating that process. And honestly, some of the people I'd be giving Caruso information about, they deserve to face consequences for what they've done." Maya studied his face, looking for calculation or manipulation. She saw only weary determination and something that looked like hope. "Why didn't you do this before? If you knew you could prove Lena was safe, why wait until now?" "Because contacting the intermediary puts Lena at risk. Even secure communications can potentially be traced by someone with enough resources and motivation. I didn't want to compromise her safety unless it was absolutely necessary." Nico's voice dropped. "But losing you, that's become necessary enough to take the risk." The admission should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt heavy with responsibility. Maya was now the reason Nico would potentially expose a woman he'd helped disappear, compromise her carefully constructed safety for the sake of proving himself trustworthy. What if she says no? What if Lena doesn't want to surface, even for a video call with Caruso? Then I'll respect her choice and find another way to convince you. But Maya, Nico finally closed the distance and took her hand. I need you to tell me honestly if proof would even matter. If you've already decided that being with me is too complicated, too dangerous, then I won't put Lena at risk for nothing. I'll let you go. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. I don't want to let you go. That's the problem. I'm terrified and confused and completely out of my depth, but I don't want to walk away. Then don't. Stay. Let me prove that I'm exactly who I've claimed to be, someone trying to do right by the people I care about, even when it's complicated. And if Caruso confirms Lena is alive and safe, then what? We just pretend your family's connections don't exist? That there won't be other situations where I have to choose between trusting you and protecting myself? Nico was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that suggested he'd been thinking about this for days. I'm going to make you a promise, and I need you to hold me to it. I'm going to spend the next year systematically dismantling every connection to the illegitimate parts of my family's business. I'm going to work with my lawyers and accountants to identify which companies are clean and which are compromised, and I'm going to sell or restructure everything that's compromised. It's going to be messy and expensive and probably cost me relationships with people I've known my entire life. But I'm going to do it. Why? Why now? Because you deserve a partner whose past doesn't constantly threaten your future. Because I'm tired of living in gray areas and moral compromise. Because his voice broke slightly. Because I love you enough to become the man you deserve, not just the man I've been. Maya's tears spilled over. That's not fair. You can't put the responsibility for your redemption on me. I'm not. The decision to change is mine. I've been working toward it for years. You're just the reason I'm finally committed to finishing what I started. Nico moved to the chair beside her, no longer across the table, but close enough to wrap his arm around her shoulders. Maya, I'm going to prove to you that being with me doesn't mean accepting darkness. It means being with someone who's fighting toward light and wants you beside him for that fight. She turned her face into his shoulder and let herself cry, releasing the tension and fear of the past week. Nico held her quietly, his hand stroking her hair, not trying to fix anything or convince her of anything, just being present in her pain. When Maya finally pulled back, wiping her eyes with the napkin Nico offered, she felt steadier, clearer. Okay. Contact your intermediary, arrange the call with Caruso, and Nico, I'm going to need regular updates on the business restructuring. Real transparency, not just vague promises about doing better. You'll have it. Complete access to what I'm doing and why. No secrets, no evasions. Nico's smile was tentative, but genuine. Does this mean you're staying? It means I'm not leaving yet. The rest depends on you following through. I will. I promise you, Maya, I will. The next week passed in a strange limbo. Maya went to work, Nico called every evening to update her on his progress with the intermediary, and the space between them felt both impossible to bridge and impossible to widen. He didn't pressure her to see him in person, seemed to understand she needed time to process everything that had happened. On Wednesday, Nico called with news. The intermediary made contact. Lena has agreed to a video call with Caruso, with conditions. The call will be recorded, but Caruso can't trace the connection or try to identify her location. He gets to verify she's alive and chose to disappear voluntarily, nothing more. And he agreed? After I provided the information about my father's associates that I'd promised. He's not happy about the restrictions, but he agreed. Nico paused. The call is scheduled for Friday afternoon. Do you want to be there when it happens? Maya's heart hammered. Where? Caruso's office at the police station. Neutral territory, official setting. He suggested you attend as well, said you deserve to hear directly from Lena rather than through his or my filter. Okay, yes, I want to be there. Friday arrived with agonizing slowness. Maya took a personal day from work, unable to concentrate on client presentations when her entire future felt contingent on a conversation with a woman she'd never met. Nico picked her up at noon, and they drove to the police station in tense silence. Caruso met them in the lobby, his expression carefully neutral. Ms. Hart, Nico. Thanks for coming. We're set up in a conference room upstairs. They followed him through the station, a maze of desks and offices that smelled like bad coffee and institutional cleaning products. The conference room was small and windowless, dominated by a table with a laptop already set up and ready. Caruso gestured for them to sit. Ground rules, he said, settling into his own chair. I'm going to verify identity and circumstances. You two don't speak during the call unless I indicate otherwise. At the end, if I'm satisfied Lena Kwan disappeared voluntarily and is currently safe, I'll say so on record. If I'm not satisfied, this investigation continues. Everyone clear? Maya and Nico both nodded. Caruso typed something on the laptop, initiating a video call that connected after several seconds of loading. The screen filled with a woman's face, older than the photo Caruso had shown Maya at dinner, her dark hair shorter, but unmistakably the same person. Lena Kwan was alive. Detective Caruso. Her voice was calm, slightly wary. I understand you have questions about my departure from Boston 4 years ago. Ms. Kwan, can you confirm your identity, date of birth, last known address in Boston, and the name of your employer before you left the city? Lena provided the information without hesitation, each detail matching the police report Maya had read. Caruso made notes, his detective's instincts clearly cataloging every detail. Ms. Kwan, I need to ask directly. Did Nico Valenti or anyone associated with the Valenti family coerce you into leaving Boston, threaten you, harm you, or force you to disappear against your will? No. Lena's answer was firm. I asked Nico for help leaving. I'd made mistakes, gotten involved with people I shouldn't have, and I needed to start over somewhere those mistakes couldn't follow me. Nico provided resources and connections to make that possible, but the choice to leave was entirely mine. These people you'd gotten involved with, were they associates of the Valenti family? Lena hesitated, glancing off screen at something or someone Maya couldn't see. Some were. I'd tried to leverage Nico's family connections for my business, without understanding what that really meant. When things went wrong, I asked Nico to help fix my mistakes. He cleared my debts and gave me the opportunity to disappear. I took it. And your current situation? Are you safe, free to live as you choose? Completely. I have a new identity, a new career, a life that's entirely my own. No one from Boston knows where I am or who I became. That security is something I asked for and received. Lena's eyes found the camera directly. Detective, I know you've been investigating my disappearance for years. I'm asking you to close that investigation. I'm alive, I'm safe, and I chose this. Nico didn't hurt me. He saved me from consequences I'd created for myself. Caruso was quiet for a long moment, studying Lena's face on the screen. Ms. Kwan, I need to ask one more question. Is anyone there with you now? Anyone who might be influencing what you're saying? My husband is in the next room. We've been married for 2 years. He knows my real identity and my history, and he supports me being here for this call. Lena's smile was soft. I have a good life, detective. A real life. Please don't take that away from me by continuing to dig into my past. Your husband knows you were involved with Nico Valenti. He knows everything. And before you ask, no, I'm not willing to identify myself or my current location. The point of disappearing was to stay disappeared. This call is the only exception I'm making, and only because Nico asked and explained why it mattered. Caruso glanced at Maya, then back at the screen. Ms. Kwan, Maya Hart is here, the woman currently in a relationship with Nico. Is there anything you'd like to say to her? Lena's gaze shifted, finding Maya through the camera. You're braver than I was. I ran from Nico's world when it got complicated. You're choosing to stay and face those complications. Just make him keep his promises. Make him be the man he's trying to be, not the man his family expects. He's capable of being really good if someone holds him accountable. Maya's throat tightened. Did you love him? I thought I did. But what I actually loved was what he could do for me, the doors he could open. That's not the same thing as loving who someone is. Lena's expression was gentle, almost sympathetic. You're different, though. I can see it in how worried he was about proving my safety to you. Nico never worried about what I thought of him. The fact that he worries about your opinion, that's real. Before Maya could respond, Lena looked back at Caruso. Detective, do you have what you need? I do. Thank you for your time, Ms. Kwan. I'll be closing the missing persons case as of today. Thank you. Lena's image froze for a moment, then the screen went black as the call disconnected. The conference room fell into loaded silence. Caruso closed his laptop with deliberate care, then looked at Nico with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. You kept your word about the information on your father's associates, and Lena Kwan is clearly alive and chose her disappearance. He stood gathering his notes. I'm officially closing her case, but Nico, this doesn't change my investigation into your family's operations. It just means I'm not looking at you for murder. I understand. And Ms. Hart, Caruso's attention shifted to Maya. You're making an informed choice now. You've seen what kind of man Nico can be when he's backed into a corner, the resources he can leverage, the way he operates in gray areas between legal and illegal. If you're staying with him, do it with your eyes open. I am, Maya said quietly. My eyes are completely open. Caruso nodded once, then left them alone in the conference room. Maya turned to Nico, who was staring at the blank laptop screen like he could still see Lena's face there. She seems happy, Maya said. She deserves to be. She made mistakes, but she didn't deserve to pay for them forever. Nico's hand found Maya's, his grip almost painfully tight. Did that help? Seeing her, hearing her say I didn't hurt her? Yes, it helped a lot. Maya squeezed back. But Nico, Lena was right about one thing. I need you to keep your promises. About restructuring the businesses, about transparency, about being the man you're trying to be. I will, starting now. He pulled a folder from the bag he'd brought and set it on the conference table. These are the preliminary reports from my lawyers and accountants. Every Valenti company, every investment, every connection, categorized by how clean the money is and what would be required to sever ties with anything compromised. It's not pretty reading. Maya opened the folder and scanned the first few pages. The scope was staggering. Dozens of companies, millions of dollars, connections that went back generations. Untangling it would take years and cost a fortune. This is a lot, she said faintly. I know, which is why I'm asking for your help. Nico's expression was serious. Not to do the work. I have professionals for that. But to hold me accountable, to check in regularly, to ask hard questions, to call me out if I'm compromising or making excuses. Can you do that? Maya thought about the woman she'd been a month ago, desperate, drowning, barely holding on. And she thought about who she was becoming, confident at work, stable financially, strong enough to demand honesty from a man who terrified and attracted her in equal measure. I can do that, she said. But Nico, I need something from you too. Anything. I need you to be patient while I learn to trust this. Trust us. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and be completely comfortable with your family's history or the complexity of what you're untangling. It's going to take time. I have time. All the time you need. Nico stood and pulled her up with him, his hands framing her face. Maya, I meant what I said at the coffee shop. I love you. That's not going to change whether you say it back tomorrow or a year from now or never. I'm in this for as long as you'll have me. I'm not ready to say it back yet. I know. But I'm getting there. Maya rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and tentative, a promise of possibility rather than certainty. I'm getting there. They left the police station hand in hand, stepping out into a Boston afternoon that felt cleaner somehow, as if Lena's testimony had cleared the air of suspicion and doubt. The drive back to Maya's apartment was quiet but comfortable, both of them processing what had happened. At her door, Nico hesitated. Can I take you to dinner tonight? Somewhere nice to celebrate having this behind us? Maya thought about her calendar, about the work waiting for Monday, about the careful balance she was trying to maintain between her independence and her relationship. Then she thought about Lena's advice, make him be the man he's trying to be, and realized that also meant letting herself be the woman who could accept love when it was offered honestly. Yes, but Nico, can we go somewhere normal? Not expensive or exclusive, just normal. Pizza or Thai food or something that feels like what regular couples do. His smile was brilliant. I know a great pizza place in the North End. Family owned, no connections to my family, just incredible food. How's 7? Perfect. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Maya excelled at Hartwell, earning her first performance bonus and praise from the partners. Nico worked with his legal team on the business restructuring, updating Maya regularly on progress and setbacks. They had dinner several times a week, sometimes at expensive restaurants, sometimes at the pizza place that became their favorite, once at her apartment where Maya cooked an admittedly mediocre pasta that Nico praised anyway. They didn't sleep together. Not yet. Both seemed to understand that sex would complicate things before they'd fully stabilized, and there was something powerful about building physical intimacy slowly. Kissing that grew more intense, touching that became more familiar, nights spent curled together fully clothed, just learning the shape of each other. Antonio invited them to dinner twice more, and Maya learned to navigate the older man's testing questions and approval. He never mentioned Caruso's investigation or Lena's reappearance, but his treatment of Maya shifted from evaluation to acceptance. She was part of Nico's life now, which meant she was family in whatever complicated way the Valentis defined that term. 3 months after the call with Lena, Nico took Maya back to his townhouse for dinner. They'd fallen into the easy pattern of him cooking while she sat at the kitchen island asking about his day, and tonight felt no different until Nico set down his knife and turned to face her with unusual seriousness. I need to show you something. He led her to his study, the same room where they'd sat after the disastrous dinner with his father, and opened his laptop to a series of documents. This is the first phase of the restructuring. 3 companies sold to legitimate buyers, 2 dissolved entirely, 1 converted to a nonprofit that I'm no longer involved in managing. The money from the sales is being invested in clean businesses, tech startups, renewable energy, educational initiatives. Nico scrolled through financial statements that meant little to Maya, but clearly meant everything to him. It's not complete. There's still work to do. But I wanted you to see that I'm keeping my promise. Maya scanned the documents, her mind struggling to process the sheer scale of what he was describing. How much money are we talking about? About 40 million in the first phase. When it's all done, probably closer to 100 million will have been liquidated and reinvested. Nico's expression was calm. I'll still be wealthy after all this. The legitimate businesses are successful enough to support several lifetimes. But the compromised money, the connections that came from my grandfather's and father's choices instead of mine, that's being systematically removed. Your father must be furious. He's disappointed, but he also respects that I'm doing it methodically rather than recklessly, that I'm not creating scandals or burning bridges unnecessarily. Nico closed the laptop. I told him that you were the reason I'm finally committed to finishing this. He said that's the best reason to make difficult changes, doing it for someone who makes you want to be better. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. I don't want to be responsible for changing who you are. You're not changing me. You're giving me a reason to become who I've always wanted to be. Nico pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. Maya, I know we agreed to take things slow. I know you're not ready to say you love me, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay? Can you see a future with me? Not tomorrow or next month, but eventually. Can you imagine building a life together once all of this complexity is resolved? Maya pulled back enough to look at his face. She saw hope there, and vulnerability, and the kind of patient devotion she'd never experienced before. She thought about the past 3 months, about the way Nico had kept every promise, about how safe she felt in his presence despite the legitimate dangers of his world. I can see it, she said quietly. It scares me how clearly I can see it. But yes, Nico, I can imagine a future with you. His kiss was reverent, almost worshipful, his hands gentle on her face like she was something infinitely precious. Maya kissed back with growing intensity, months of restrained desire finally breaking through the careful boundaries they'd maintained. Stay tonight, Nico whispered against her mouth. Not in the guest room. With me. Okay. They moved upstairs slowly, pausing to kiss on the landing, to touch with increasing boldness as they navigated the hallway to his bedroom. The space was familiar now from mornings when Maya had woken there after falling asleep talking. But tonight felt different, charged with intention rather than accident. Nico undressed her carefully, his hands reverent on skin he'd touched before, but never like this. Maya returned the favor, learning the landscape of his body with growing confidence. When they finally came together, it felt like inevitable completion rather than crossing a line. 2 people who'd been moving toward this moment since the night he'd saved her in an alley. Afterward, lying tangled together in his bed, Maya felt something shift permanently in her chest. The fear and caution that had defined their relationship gave way to certainty. Not that their future would be simple, but that it would be worth fighting for. I love you, she said into the darkness. I'm terrified and probably crazy for it, but I love you. Nico's arms tightened around her. Say it again. I love you, Nico Valenti, complications and all. I love you too, more than I knew I could love anyone. They fell asleep wrapped in each other, and when Maya woke in the early morning light, she felt at peace for the first time in longer than she could remember. The next 2 years passed in a blur of continued progress. Nico completed the business restructuring, divesting entirely from the compromised operations and building a legitimate empire focused on sustainable development and technology investment. Maya was promoted twice at Hartwell, eventually becoming a senior partner with her own client portfolio. They moved in together, not to Nico's townhouse or Maya's Cambridge apartment, but to a new space they chose together, something that belonged to both of them equally. Antonio's health began to decline, and Nico spent increasing time at the estate managing his father's care. The older man never fully approved of Nico's business choices, but he acknowledged that his son had built something lasting and clean. On his deathbed, Antonio called Maya to his side. "You made him better than I could have," he said, his voice weak but clear. "Thank you for that." After Antonio's death, Caruso closed his investigation into the Valenti family, not because there was nothing to find, but because the targets of his investigation had either died, retired, or been systematically removed from power by Nico's restructuring. At the funeral, the detective approached Nico with something that might have been respect. "You did what you said you'd do, cleaned house. It's more than most people in your position would attempt." Caruso extended his hand. "For what it's worth, I believe you're trying to be better than your legacy. Keep trying." Nico shook his hand without hesitation. "I intend to." 3 years after the night they met, Nico proposed to Maya in the garden behind his townhouse. Now their townhouse, the space they'd made their own through shared mornings and late-night conversations. The ring was simple, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious jewelry his family would have expected. "Marry me," he said simply. "Build this clean, complicated, beautiful life with me, officially." Maya said yes without hesitation. They married in a small ceremony at City Hall, surrounded by Rebecca and colleagues from Hartwell, Vincent, and the handful of staff who'd become like family, and a few close friends they'd made together. No big production, no society wedding, just two people choosing each other deliberately and completely. On their honeymoon in Italy, Nico showing her the Sicily his grandfather had left behind, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From desperation and a chance encounter to building something real from broken pieces and honest effort. "Do you ever regret it?" Nico asked one evening as they watched the sun set over the Mediterranean. "Accepting my help that first time, getting involved in all the complexity?" Maya thought about the woman she'd been, exhausted, frightened, barely surviving, and she thought about who she'd become, confident, loved, strong enough to demand honesty and hold a good man accountable to his best self. "Never," she said firmly, "not for a single second." "Even when it was hardest?" "Especially then, because the hard parts taught me I was brave enough to fight for something real." Maya turned to face him fully. "You saved me, Nico. But more than that, you gave me the space to save myself. That's the real gift." "We saved each other," Nico said quietly. "I was drowning in obligations and legacy I didn't want. You gave me a reason to fight my way free." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun completed its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Behind them, their hotel room waited, a space they'd make their own for the next 2 weeks before returning to Boston and the life they were building together. A year later, Maya stood in the offices of the Valenti Foundation, the nonprofit Nico had established to support children impacted by incarceration and family members affected by organized crime. The foundation represented everything they'd worked toward, taking the resources that had come from darkness and transforming them into light, using wealth that had been accumulated through questionable means to create genuine good. Today was the opening gala, and Maya had spent months preparing, coordinating with partner organizations, securing speakers, planning an event that would launch the foundation properly into public consciousness. As donors and supporters filled the elegant event space, Maya caught sight of Nico across the room speaking with a senator they'd courted for months. He looked up, found her eyes, and smiled. The private smile that was just for her, that said everything important without words. Rebecca approached with champagne and a knowing look. "You two are disgustingly happy. You know that?" "I do know that. It's wonderful." "Remember when you first started at Hartwell? You were half-starved and terrified, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, trying so hard to prove you belonged?" Rebecca's smile was warm. "Look at you now, senior partner, married to someone who adores you, launching a foundation that's going to change lives. You've come a long way, Maya." "We both have." Maya clinked her glass against Rebecca's. "Thank you for taking a chance on me back then. Thank Nico for getting you in the door. Thank yourself for everything that came after." As the gala progressed, Maya moved through the crowd with practiced ease, answering questions about the foundation's mission and accepting congratulations on the launch. When she finally found her way back to Nico's side, he wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her close. "Look at what we built," he murmured into her hair. "From broken pieces and impossible circumstances, We built something that matters. Maya surveyed the room, the donors writing checks, the partner organizations making connections, the formerly incarcerated parents sharing their stories with people who'd never understood their struggles before. This was redemption made real. This was the future they'd chosen together, built from honesty and hard work, and the unwavering belief that people could be better than their worst moments. We did, she agreed, and we're just getting started. That night, in the home they'd made together, Maya sat beside Nico on the couch, where they'd spent countless evenings planning and dreaming. The box from her mother had arrived that afternoon, photos from Maya's childhood, mementos her mother had saved, a note expressing pride in the woman her daughter had become, and gratitude for Nico's help with the medical bills he'd quietly paid when Maya finally agreed to let him. "Your mother loves you very much," Nico said, reading over her shoulder. "She's proud of you. She's proud of us, of what we've built together." Maya set the note aside and turned to face him. "Nico, I want to tell you something I've never said properly." "What's that?" "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for offering help when I was too proud to ask, for being patient while I learned to trust, for keeping every promise even when it cost you everything." Maya's voice thickened with emotion. "You gave me my life back, but more than that, you showed me I deserved a better life than the one I'd been settling for. That's a gift I can never fully repay. You don't need to repay it. Loving me, believing in me, holding me accountable to becoming better, that's more than enough." Nico pulled her close, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "We're even, Maya. We saved each other. Now we get to build whatever comes next together." And they did. Over the following years, the Valenti Foundation grew into one of Boston's most respected charitable organizations. Maya's career flourished as she balanced partnership at Hartwell with foundation work. Nico continued to build legitimate businesses while supporting other entrepreneurs trying to escape complicated legacies. They bought a house with a garden where Maya could grow vegetables and Nico could practice the cooking his grandmother had taught him decades ago. They had arguments about money and priorities, compromises about how to spend holidays, negotiations about whose family obligations took precedence. They had moments of doubt when old fears resurfaced, when Maya wondered if she'd been naive to trust so completely, or when Nico worried he'd never fully escape his family's shadow. But they also had mornings drinking coffee in comfortable silence, evenings cooking together while sharing stories from their days, nights falling asleep tangled together after making love. They had inside jokes and favorite restaurants, yearly trips to Sicily and quiet weekends at home, the accumulated intimacy of lives genuinely shared. 5 years after the night they met, Maya stood in her office at Hartwell, reviewing quarterly reports when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She opened it to find a photo. Lena Kwan, older now, standing beside a man who was clearly her husband and holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The message below read, "Thank you for making him keep his promises. You were right to demand proof before trusting. And thank you for giving me the space to stay disappeared. My daughter will never know the woman I used to be, and that's the greatest gift I could ask for. Be happy, Maya. You both deserve it." Maya saved the photo, sent a silent blessing to the woman who'd chosen escape while Maya had chosen to stay and fight. Then she deleted the message, protecting Lena's privacy one final time, and returned to the work that gave her life meaning. When Nico came home that evening, she showed him the photo before deleting it from her phone entirely. "She looks happy," he said softly. "She is. And so are we." Maya wrapped her arms around his waist. "We did it, Nico. We built something real from impossible circumstances. We chose each other every day until choosing each other became as natural as breathing." "Best choice I ever made," Nico said, kissing the top of her head. "Watching you that night at the Meridian, deciding to approach you, asking you to trust me when you had every reason not to, best choice of my life." "Mine too. Taking your card, making that phone call, choosing to believe you could be exactly who you claim to be. I'd do it all again without hesitation." They stood together in the kitchen of the home they'd built, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd created, photos from their wedding, artwork they'd chosen together, the ordinary domestic clutter of two people who'd made a space entirely their own. Outside, Boston spread out beneath them, the city where they'd met, where they'd fought through complications and built something lasting, where they'd transformed desperation into devotion and fear into family. Maya Hart, who'd once been a waitress barely surviving, was now a woman who knew her worth and demanded it be recognized. Nico Valenti, who'd once been trapped by legacy and obligation, was now a man who chose goodness deliberately and worked to earn it every day. Together, they'd proven that love could exist in complicated circumstances, that redemption was possible for those willing to work for it, and that the best relationships were built not on perfection, but on honest effort and unwavering commitment to becoming better together than either could be alone. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything.